Welcome everyone to our first open season here on the Bear Workshop. For those of you that are not part of the Magda server, this is a pretty regular thing I do over there. Once a quarter, I'll get some pilots together who are actively brewing and taking the deck to tournaments and testing new things and get their thoughts on developments with regards to bans, unbans, new releases, new tech, all that good stuff. And that's kind of what we're going to be doing here today. This is going to be a bit of I guess, not a beginner's guide, but like the first one. So we're going to be discussing a lot of like foundational stuff related to the bear and kind of wrap our heads around stuff like archetypes and packages. It'll probably be pretty old hat to some of you, but it's good to start with the beginning, I guess. So this is open season Tarkir Dragonstorm. So our agenda is going to consist of talking about updates and tournament data. Then we're going to go into our barely playables, which is the new cards. Then we're going to go to our open discussion with regards to archetypes and packages, in the hopes that me and Eric here are both smarter than your average bear. I don't know if that's the case, but it was a cute name, so I used it. Then we're gonna go do an open Q&A, and then we'll just do a quick little talking about mulligans and how to practice and prepare a little bit better than you might be doing so far in your bear journey. So this will be upcoming. I was hoping to get this knocked out before I went to Japan, but got busy. So we're gonna be working on server improvements and reaching out to the community to see like how they like to see the server improve. Getting people who feel comfortable getting pinged for requests for comment on that stuff. That's kind of like civic engagement type stuff, so not super exciting, but if you're interested in that, stay tuned. I'll probably make an announcement when I get that set up. We've only had one top 16 with the bear since or in a 60 plus server 60 plus event since I think November, and that was Alexander. So congrats to them. We've had some people get pretty close. I think we had like a 14th and or like an 18th and a 20th place in a 60 plus. So people just bubbling out. So people are doing really well. However, there is a large there's a lot of people that are like taking down locals. They're like 35% conversion for like less than 60 player tournaments. That can mean some dudes just winning 2 games and then cutting to top 4, but it also means that there's some people playing like 30 man tournaments and taking it home, or making top 4 after like 4 rounds, which is considerably better and more and all that good stuff. So when I look at these numbers, I see potential. Obviously, our conversion rate in tournament play is not incredible right now, but I think with my experiences with Magda tell me that with time and interest from like quality pilots and people that tournament grind fairly regularly, we're gonna see that number climb a little bit, and then it'll go down again as the deck gets like really popular. But I think we haven't quite hit that first break point of like bear excellence yet, and I think we'll get there because I think the deck is very hard to interact with, and I think the deck is very good at playing on the axis that it has access to. Eric, you have anything you want to say about like meta placement and win rate?
Yeah, I think right now, if we're looking at like the decks that are doing really, really well, blue is a really, really important color to be in. But right behind it is these kind of cradle farmy decks. And so big mana is kind of on the horizon. And even though we're seeing, things like Gifts Ungiven being unbanned or additional sounds effects like Voice of Victory, um, I think that our deck, um, a lot of its win lines don't trigger Rhystic Study and is able to acquire this like massive mana or means of interactions that's just on such a unique axis, that I think, I would very much agree with you that while I definitely think, there's some people who are just doing really, really well because they just play in their game store against the same like two or three people. We also have some really, really, really incredible people in this Discord. And I truly believe it's just a matter of time before the Bear starts taking down tournaments overall. I think there's still just a lot of unexplored tech, and even something like Rootpath Purifier, which had the capacity to be in the deck the entire time we've been brewing it. We've only pseudo recently kind of like opened the door to kind of like more thoroughly exploring it. And so I'm pretty confident that once we get one or two more tools in a Bear Pilot's toolkit, the Blue Farm better watch out.
Right, right, absolutely. All right, so we're gonna move swiftly on into our barely playables. Um, but before we get to the cards themselves, I want to piggyback off what you just said to talk about card evaluation in general. It's very important that even when cards seem initially not super awesome or like fringe or risky or whatever negative adjective you want to use to like dismiss a card, you have, I guess, the analytic humility to appreciate that one, um, the that we're only going to get like great information through testing. So writing off stuff that is borderline without testing is probably going to lead to some false negatives, like in the case with Rootpath Purifier, and in the case of cards like Vesuva. We didn't think those cards were, or initially the auto includes what they are today. Um, so having that humility to test things that your first read is mediocre or like maybe barely, um, and also just appreciate that cards are going to change. Their context is going to change. The meta is going to change. Speed is going to change. All those things are going to change. So playability is a moving target, and be willing to reassess and re-engage with cards that you haven't thought about in a long time, with a fresh perspective, and don't necessarily hold on to the truthism of 6 months ago for today.
Yeah, jumping off of that, like when someone discovers that a card is like low key really good, like we all benefit from that, right?
Absolutely.
Um, um, and if someone is interested in testing a card that you've tested and you didn't like, um, there's also nothing wrong with like chiming in and saying like, yeah, I tried, let's use Hermit Druid as an example. I tried Hermit Druid and I didn't like it for these reasons, or it didn't work really well for me for these reasons. But if that person is revisiting the card, and let's say they have a better experience with it than you do, you guys aren't competing over like the solitary definition of the card, or you're not wrestling over like reality. All that's happening is that you have two people in very context sensitive situations who are revealing more information. And so I think it's really important as we continue to grow. We've moved from a community that had, for the most part, like two or three brewers, now to like literally hundreds of people playing the list.
Yep.
Um, and it's still very, very far from a solved list. And we're also, I think, getting a larger population of people who are trying to play Lumra in bracket 2 or bracket 3. So I just highly encourage people, both from tournament grinders to just you think bear punts are really funny, and you expect to see a higher density of them here than like in the Kudo Discord. Um, just to like in the same way that when we evaluate cards, we try to like use these heuristics of like, oh, what point of the game are you in? Like, who are your opponents? If someone's talking about let's say like Emrakul, try to acquire some context before you jump in and give feedback. Of like, are they someone who just joined the server? Are they someone who you've had a lot of conversations with? Do they have a list that you can go into the deck list channel and see so that you can kind of garner that information about what other cards they're running that might make it really good, or those types of things. Once again, not to say that you can't say that cards are bad, or not to say that you can't dig your heels in if you think a card is really, really good. Just encouraging people that like the more nuanced and the more complex we're able to cause our conversations about cards to be, the more that we're all able to take a step forward together and evaluating them in a new way that opens the door to new tech or towards new people joining our community.
Right. I'll probably put a little more emphasis on part of that point in that, uh, from a community management perspective, new players coming in, thinking they discovered a card that people may not have thought about before, um, them being engaged in conversation and exploring the idea will always garner better results than telling them what they should have already been thinking. Does that make sense? Uh, the not that it happens very often, but the shutdown of someone thinking they're broaching a new idea and then being told, no, we've already had that idea and it's a bad one. Move on. That's a very easy pitfall to fall into as a community or as an individual, because you're trying to save that person time and energy in testing a tested or mediocre idea. But it's always better to get them discussing it, and like you said, a more nuanced perspective on it rather than like a strident, like authoritative, top down, like we think this is bad, we being the authoritative bears, therefore we're done talking about it, kind of thing. So that's like how we like to view cards, more nuanced, open-minded, and being, I guess, like analytically humble and willing to change our positions as information is brought to us. So let's move on to the cards. We only have 4 this time, which is probably better than most decks get most sets, so I'm kind of okay with this. We got Kisha the Village, Nature's Rhythm, Speaker of the Harvest, and Will of the Sultai. 2 of these cards are better than the other, but we'll get to it. So, Kisha the Village is so close. Like, so close to playable, in my opinion. I'll read it out to the people that are just listening. It's a land with this land enters tapped unless you control an island or a swamp. It has tap to add a green, and 3 and a green, tap to Surveil 2. 5 mana for Surveil 2 is not particularly great, not on rate, not exactly what we'd be paying for anyway. But we would have taken it on an untapped green land. We would have taken it in a heartbeat, because having excess places to put your excess mana is always good. But always being a tap land, there's very few cards in the deck that there's just not a whole lot of great cards in the deck that are always tapped, and almost all of them are soul lands, tap for 2. So it's a toughie. We need our green sources, our green sources to get us to our dork or our turn 2 play that makes our lands untap or what have you. That's my take. Eric, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think for a lot of reasons, I think many people who are watching right now or listening might be able to ascertain that this card, I think, is a great example of, it seems like the design space for this was oriented towards more of a draft or a limited environment. in terms of how it's intersecting with the rest of the green wedge.
Mm-hmm.
I expect that like if this had like provided the ability, kind of like shifting woodland style, to give target permanent in your graveyard harmonize, or something like that. Even if it was always coming in tapped, it would still be worth it.
Yeah.
But the fact that it takes us off of a green source early, that we have access to other lands that surveil on ETB, my suspicion is that it's going to be very, very difficult, at least in the mainline CEDH lists, for this land to find a home. Um, uh, there definitely could be someone who manages to put like the right Scryfall advanced search together and find some random combo. But on its face, it doesn't read like it has a lot of potential. Totally open to the possibility that someone tries it out and it's much better than we think it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have the expectation that that's going to happen.
Yep. And if it had a home, it'd be in the grindiest version of the deck for sure. The deck that wants to put as many cards in the graveyard as possible to make their, the next hit one that cascades, basically, and turns into a win. So decks that expect to be playing for multiple turns, for upwards of 6 or 7. All right, let's move on to a card that I think we're all familiar with. Honestly, the card's so good it's hard to it's almost hard to lay out succinctly what all it does well. Um, it's a non-green requiring tutor. It's 2 tutors. It is a card that can be milled and still played for value, and it plays better with our commander in from the graveyard if we want something that's larger than 2. Like it's cheaper from the command zone, or using the commander for the harmonized cost. So let me read this out for you guys, just for those that are listening. Nature's Rhythm. It's X green sorcery. Search your library for a creature card with mana value X or less. Put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. Harmonize. X green. You may cast this card from your graveyard. For its harmonized cost, you may tap a creature you control to reduce that cost by an amount of generic mana equal to its power. Then exile this spell. So, like I said, there was a thought a few months ago. I don't know if I had it or someone else had it, but I came to the conclusion that if we continue getting cards that are nominally good when they're in our hand, but they are playable from the graveyard in some way, shape, or fashion, like Dryads, or this card, for example, just cards that you can play from your graveyard for value, to get you closer to a combo piece or just grinding. I guess Loam is another one of those cards. The deck's gonna sing, right? Because your whiffs get less whiffy because the deck treats the graveyard like its hand, but only after a certain breakpoint or threshold is passed, which is to say tutoring for a particular land that makes the graveyard your hand, or playing your commander to get enough lands that you can assemble something. But the more cards that we get in this deck that just say, it doesn't matter what the game state looks like, this card's going to be playable from your graveyard, so feel free to mill. Feel free to pitch your hand. Stuff like that. It just makes play safer. It makes whiffing less likely. It smooths out play patterns in a way that will ultimately get you over the finish line, a non-insignificant number of times. And this one just happens to be a double tutor. So I guess the only thing I would say is that your green sources matter, like, a lot. So consider cutting a worse non-green land for a forest, or a snow-covered forest, more likely. Yeah, do you have anything, Eric?
Um, Yeah, I mean, this card is good. This card is like really, really good. This card is like making people pick up commanders so that they can have access to green good. So I think for us and kind of moving forward, the conversation is less like, oh, should we be on this universal tutor we can cast from our graveyard? I think that question kind of answers itself. I think um, another very important question to ask is, are there tutor chains that we can do with this? Um, or are there kind of like not win the game combos, but tutor one into tutor two that essentially set us up to win? Um, and of course, I think this card is going to develop a very similar conversation around it that I think Realms Uncharted or Temporal Discovery is, and that it's kind of a de facto win the game if you can resolve the A plus B component of it.
Yeah.
But as much as possible as a community, exploring the domain in which we tutor those parts of those combos. Um, so I would highly encourage people to hop into the individual card discussion, especially if you play a game. If like you got a Rootpath Purifier and then you went and grabbed your Ashaya or something like that, because I think that this is a card that we have the ability to push just a little bit further than most other decks in our format right now. Um, and so the more aggressively we can push and find those like new lines, the better. I definitely know. I was really hoping we would be able to get this and prime time. Rip, still super sad. Pouring out for our guy.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get him soon. I think if we do manage to get prime time, this does essentially become like an Inala Spellseeker situation.
Yeah.
Um, but until then, I will settle for essentially like getting a double tutor back to back.
Yeah. Something I wanted to mention in that. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. No, I totally lost it as you were talking about primetime. Free My Boy came to mind, and then it was just all gone.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
It'll come back to you.
Yeah.
TLDR, good card.
Oh,
You should run it.
it's back. It's back. Okay. So something that is very important for decks with low card quality because of access to fewer colors is the idea of layered combos and critical redundancy and incidental redundancy. All those things are super important. This is one of those cards that assists with that. So I look at decks like Yogg, and it's a deck that literally it just oops all combos. You just draw 7 cards, and if 2 of them are combo pieces, if you can make the mana, you win the game. Lumra has that kind of vibe pretty regularly. It's and tutors that end up pulling double duty, for example, or just needing 2 classes of card, and you kind of get there. Is definitely how these monocolored decks distinguish themselves and make themselves incredibly consistent and more importantly resilient to interaction. We benefit from not having that many pieces that are removed from the board permanently and easily by our opponents, but these type of cards will aid that like critical redundancy like threshold that will make the deck just kind of oops, I just win from this position. And the easier that gets, the easier our mulligans get, the more cards we get to keep, the more lands we get to keep. The cleaner our play patterns become, I guess is the way to put that. So yeah, card is good. Let's move on to a slightly less good card. So this is a stupidly awesome card. First, like I'm sure it's breakable somewhere. I don't think it's with us, but I mean it's probably breakable with us. It's not the thing we want to be doing. Um, it's also very interactable. So I'll read Steward of the Harvest real quick for you guys. It is a 3 and a green for a 3/3 creature human druid. When this creature enters, exile up to 3 target lands from your graveyard. creatures you control have all activated abilities of all land cards exiled with this creature. There's a lot of awesome text in this, being kind of a weird like land news, uh, enduring vitality style card is just really cool. The problem is it creates like the most dangerous inflection point this deck could possibly have, which is exiling lands from the graveyard and then having nothing to show for it. Like, we don't like getting Bajuka bogged. We don't like getting unlicensed Hearst. We don't like we don't get like getting ganked by the endurance when we're trying to pop off. And this is kind of like doing our opponent's dirty work for them. We're exiling the cards forever and then giving them a nice, juicy, easy to hit target to make those cards really stay away forever. Also, we don't run that many creatures. We don't run that many creatures outside of the Field of the Dead situation. You're just not likely to like get a whole lot of value. Also, we don't have like an outlet in the command zone for making a metric ton of mana. So like what this guy's trying to do doesn't really do a whole lot, because you're realistically banking on having some token generator to really break accelerate past it, or having a 3-card combo, which if it was in your graveyard you probably already had that combo anyway. So this card is, at best kind of win more, at worst like a serious blowout inflection point where your opponents are just going to thank you for putting all of your good cards in one spot for them to path. And that's kind of my take on this card. It's very cute. It's a very cool design, but probably not for us.
Yeah. I think it's kind of interesting. I was in the Rodthras Discord when this card was initially spoiled, and I think there were probably about like 30 people in there who was like, oh, Lumra's going to be eaten good with this card. And then I come back over here, and I think a lot of people shared a pretty similar sentiment that Drew did, myself included. I think I would agree with a lot of his observations of the card. I guess the only thing I'd tack on is, as far as I'm aware, I don't know if anyone has actually put this card in Lumra yet. So if any of you have the courage, if any of you dare to stare into the abyss of Steward of the Harvest, and it doesn't like immediately lose you the game, you have the opportunity to become like the sole authority on this card. Otherwise, I think Time's probably gonna get the most use out of it.
Yeah, I think Golgari plus decks, anything that can put 3 cards in the yard, is probably gonna like this more, because there's probably some protection's the real thing. I want to get Mike's take on it, if they have something to say regarding this. How's it going, Mike?
What's up, Mike? You are on the air.
Yep. Potentially. Figuratively. Maybe possibly. I'm assuming you're fiddling with a microphone settings, so yeah, I would just say that I think this card requires more colors to be awesome.
Hello.
Hey, Mike.
Am I being heard?
Yeah.
I tried the card as a combo piece. With Emergent Zone and Concordant Crossroads, it popped off, but there's too much space it takes to be useful.
Too many card slots.
Yeah, because if you're already using Emergent Zone and 6 to combo out, you're already winning.
Yeah.
With other cards.
Right.
That's a problem.
I tend to agree.
Yeah. I can very much see that the case. I think this card seems like it would succeed most in situations where you already have access to a lot of mana, as well as creatures via Field of the Dead. And if you have both of those things, you don't need to be exiling cards to be advancing your board state, right? Yeah. And Not to say that like there aren't metas in which this opens a window that you wouldn't have otherwise. Just that I don't think that like meta or pod composition is the average meta or pod composition that I would expect our Lumra players to be in.
Right. All right. Well, thanks for sharing your
But
experience, Mike. Do you got anything else?
Yeah, that would be all.
All right. Unless it.
It's a good card, but it needs so much pieces to work.
Right. Agree with that. I'm gonna sit you back down in the audience. Thanks for popping in. And this is just
I
open
think
call. If anyone has a like insight they want to give on a card or a package, as we're going to go into later, this is definitely a situation. A time to talk about it. And I definitely want to get people's opinions. And it's easier for us to talk about it than for me to reread your comments in chat. So if you're comfortable with that, always toss up in the top right. There'll be actually the hand. Where is that for people that are it might be in the bottom for people that are in the audience. If you see a little wavy hand, that's the one for I would like to speak. So let's move on to the last card from Tarkir Dragonstorm. It is Will of the Sultai. So happy that we've gotten a modal Commander Matters card again for the monocolors. Love this cycle of cards. Love this the structure of these cards. So let's read it out. It's Will of the Sultai, 4 and a green, sorcery. Choose one. If you control a commander as you cast this spell, you may choose both instead. Its first mode is target player mills 3 cards. Return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Huh, that's familiar. The second one is put X +1/+1 counters on target creature, where X is the number of lands you control. It gains trample until end of turn. That's most of another card we're familiar with. It's really wild they would put all these things on one card. I wonder how could they do this. So for those of you following along, it's kind of like a disassembled sandwich Lumra. Like it's a deconstructed sandwich version of Lumra. It does all the Lumra things in a slightly different way, but it gives you Lumra power and toughness. It also gives you a Lumra ETB. It's on a sorcery, so it's much more easy to counter, but it seems like it's been working for people. I'm gonna be honest. My first rip was, why do I want to dedicate to a card what my commander could already do for 1 more mana, and is much less counterable. But in discussing it with Eric the other day, he was like, yeah, this just kind of a 1-card Wincons with, or 2-card Wincons with 1 land. That land would be Mirror Pool. For those of you that don't remember, that card has like 40 lines of text and does a different thing for each of them. One of those is copying a spell in the stack, and being one of the modes being mill card and then return card to return all the lands to the battlefield. If you copy the original Mirror Pool, you can just if you just copy the original Will of the Sultai with Mirror Pool over and over and over again, you're gonna mill out your deck and get all your lands and then be able to win. So it's kind of got that scape shift vibe, where you just kind of say, I resolve this, I'm probably gonna win. Another thing is, it is kind of player removal. If you have Lumra on the field and she's not summoning sick, and you can get 11 lands, I think. If you have 11 lands in the battlefield, you kill someone, probably. 11 plus. Because giving her trample is, non-insignificant. Mirror Pool
yeah,
is
I feel like it's like the number one question is people are like, vigilance reach. Does she have trample?
Why does she not have trample? Because it would, as someone who, my first commander was 2 Vasa, and I thought the exact same thing. I was like, how dare you give me something that says +X and then not give me trample? I'm in green, damn it.
Well, she has trample now.
She does.
Thank you, Wizards.
Thank you. Yeah, our deconstructed Lumra comes with a trample. It's trample on the side. I guess Yeah, why don't you go ahead and I've described like the loop a little bit, but why don't you go ahead and tell me about your experience, because I've literally not tested this card. I've put it in on your recommendation, but I haven't tested it yet.
Super good. I hate that I like this card so much. I think I am somewhat infamous at this point for my dislike of instants and sorceries in the list. Um, and so despite my like personal vendetta against them, um, I I often struggle or hesitate to say something is a staple or a mandatory addition to the list. Just because I think that like there's so many different ways to play Lumra, there's so many different play styles. It's one of the things that I think knits so many people together in this community is that you can play it so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
But very similar to what you said, whenever this spell resolves, it feels so similar to resolving a Lumra. Um, and so whether that is early game where you're able to essentially get a Lumra cast before you actually cast Lumra, or later game where Lumra costs 24 mana because someone's been sacrificing and recasting them all game, could be anyone. Um, or I mean, it's not impossible or hard to imagine situations where you have an Elvish Reclaimer out turn one that suddenly turns into a 14/14 on turn four. This card's versatility results in, if you squint, it being very similar to Archdruid's Charm. Well, they have very, very different functionality. They have incredibly similar flexibility, especially in relationship with our ability to close out games.
Yeah.
So, like I said before, I would hesitate to say that anything is a must add or an auto include, but I would highly encourage people to take a second look at this card, and if they still don't like it, maybe take a third or fourth look.
So something I wanted to jump in here is like the reason I didn't evaluate it very highly is because I was thinking about it being non-critical redundancy, because the command zone is our most um, reliable, uh, you know, part of the battlefield. I guess is the best way to put it. As long as we're making mana, we're getting Lumra triggers, and that's kind of what matters here. Um, but it's because we had that aversion to instants and sorceries in general that people weren't necessarily thinking about. Oh wait, isn't there a second mode on Mirror Pool? Um, and it's probably underexplored, right? I love Realms Uncharted. It might be my favorite card in the deck. Do you know how bonkers Realms Uncharted goes with Mirror Pool's second mode? It's pretty stupid. Because then you can just fail to find more than two twice, and then everything's in the command zone, and you're doing that in response to a Lumber trigger, and you've just won the game. So going back to layered synergy, great. It's probably worth it to play 15 above average cards that just kind of Rube Goldberg into a phenomenal position than it is to play like, 10 very standalone excellent cards that don't have a whole lot of synergy together. And obviously we're not in that position. Those are extremes, right? We're talking about decks with like have significantly high card quality, but cards are not like synergistic. We're very much on that other end of the spectrum with it's like total synergy pretty much. But the more we have to continue exploring synergy, and this is one of those cards that instigates exploring synergy further and being aware, because like the number one thing I see when I watch the chat about people talking about their play experiences is, man, I had the game. I've played 3 games tonight, and I had every single game, but I did not see the line, and that will come through not having defaults, I guess is to say, and approaching each game state as a puzzle and constantly reevaluating the tools at your disposal through the lens of new board states and new play patterns. You just get better at that over time, and it's my background is Baghdad. It's something I had it's a skill that I developed over there, and I've seen it become more and more useful as I feel like we've kind of converged on a lot of excellent ideas in the community, even if it doesn't mean we all run the same build. But with that homogenization of like card evaluation comes the danger of missing the birds for the trees on things that on interactions that are just sitting there, and we're just not taking advantage of them. So that was a long-winded way of saying this is okay. Probably pretty good card.
Yeah, like it a lot. Great example of how there's always more to learn. I think all of us have had to be reminded that Mirror Pool can also copy spells in addition to copying creatures.
Right.
And then exactly like you said, I think all of us have had the experience of driving home from the LGS and thinking about the game, and then just having this like clarion call where you just like see the line, and you just go like, fuck, I had it. And hopefully when you have those moments, you'll remember that you're not alone. And then we all feel that probably just as much as you.
Yeah, no, it's very much the I won the argument in the shower an hour later kind of vibe, and you're just like, damn, I wish I was this smooth in real life.
Yeah.
But it's really just trying to keep the Giga Brain while you're trying to politic. So let's move on to that's the end of our cards. Which I would say getting like some really cool design space. It's always important to recognize that even when a card's not for us, seeing the design space that are like tangential or like they're putting new things on lands, they're putting new things on cards that care about lands, they're putting new things that care about graveyards. We're getting new and interesting design space every single set, so it's useful to, I guess. I used to not think that considering what would make this card good, for example, I used to not think that was worthwhile. But if you're basing it on like the design space that you're seeing, it helps you evaluate cards in the future. So dare to dream and speculate about design space. Just don't mourn that what never was, I guess, is the if only it was like this, it'd be awesome. So let's move on to archetypes, or I guess to the smarter than your average bear. I really need to stipulate this is very much tongue in cheek. We are not smarter than your average bear. We are just bears. We're all bears here.
If anything, there's a lot of evidence to the contrary. I mean, Drew smart.
I occasionally speak good and put together a presentation. There's where my smarts are. I'm a below average pilot with a above average yap. So let's move on to our first topic, which is the archetypes. I think Lumra has. I think it's pretty wide open. I don't think there's a. I think the packages are more. They pigeonhole the deck a little bit more than archetypes do, but we can talk about that when we get to it. So our first archetype we're going to talk about is Stax. I chose it first because it's my favorite. Very arbitrary. So these are the cards, and we'll get back to the cards in a second. So we separated these like discussions into goals, strengths, non-bows, and weaknesses. Stax obviously is meant to drop a backbreaking piece of Stax or prison or permission, and then develop around it, develop through it, or just be comfortable playing as slow as your opponents, with the goal of extending the games and lengthening the windows that you have access to for winning, because your opponents can't win as fast as you can through the same circumstances. The strengths of Stax is that seed order dependent, you have an opportunity to lock out turbo decks from being able to weaponize their 14 spells per turn, and their opening turns to develop a ton of card draw, Ristic then Wheel, stuff like that. A big part of Stax in green is artifact hate, and that unfortunately means that we have there's quite a few cards out there that don't work very well, and there's the non-bows like Zuran Orb, Staff of Domination, Staff of Completion, etc. and so forth. Those are all cards that if you're adding anything more than Oof in, you might consider not having them. Also, Alter Dementia, which is a big one. We'll get back to the more like non-bow stuff when we talk about the cards individually. But the big thing about Stax is it's the hardest archetype to play, bar none. I've played Hard Control, and I've played Stax. Coco for 2, exactly. There you go. If you are not a very experienced pilot, can't read the pod very well, can't anticipate what your opponents are likely to do on turn 1 or 2, you are very, very likely to just pass the game to one of your 4 opponents. Being comfortable with having Stax in hand and not jamming it is like a super huge skill. Like, you just have to not hit that. You have to not feel that tunnel vision on I can lock out at least 2 players, because if you do, and then player D can run away with the game because you're a little bit slower than them, running fewer colors with less good cards, you'll just hand games away. And it's that's Magda experience speaking. Like, Stax Magda is one of those things that can very much just hand a game to a 4th player. Yeah, that's what Astro said was very much mirroring my experience. You can just throw out a Stax piece that only hits 2 players, and then allow another player to develop faster than you are able to win effectively. We also can't win through our...
Oh, I was gonna say, I think that's an important element of the conversation, especially when we're evaluating cards or talking with people who are Stax players. Cards on the table. I don't like playing Stax. I don't like playing against Stax, but I think it's an important archetype to have in the meta. And I think it's important to remember that like every archetype is going to have strengths and weaknesses. And so just because you have this experience of accidentally paving the way for one of your opponents doesn't mean that Stax in and of itself was bad. In the same way that if you lose because you turbo out a Lumra and you get really bad flips and you're kind of out of the game, it doesn't mean that turbo is bad. It just means that you either need more information to evaluate that situation, or you needed more information before you made the decision to implement that Stax piece in the first place.
Yeah, and you don't always get that information. There's a lot of there's a lot of experience and intuition that gives you that kind of qualia that tells you in your mind's eye that now is the time to drop the null rod, right? And I'll say that Stax is harder because you're playing proactively to 1-for-4 your opponents. But it's also one of those it's one of those situations where you can very easily identify the decision point that cost you the game, whereas other archetypes there's usually a higher density of game actions being taken, which means your opponents the distinction of this action cost me the game here is a lot muddier. So you can say, yeah, I let this person draw 2 more cards and that cost me the game, but it's a lot harder to identify whether that was the wrong decision. Whereas when you're playing Stax, you can be like, yeah, I probably should not have played a Song of Titania into the blue farm deck that didn't really care. You had something to say, Eric?
No, very much agree with you. Definitely think it is. I think Stax weirdly is a place where a lot of people start with Lumra. I think it's kind of similar to how a lot of people start CDH with like Korkashima. Um, just in that like Lumra Stax has potential to so powerfully just like lock out the board. I think some things that would I would potentially caution people before picking up Lumra Stacks is that most of it is artifact or enchantment based, which is something that we don't have a good opportunity at removing on demand.
Yep.
Like Collector Oof, we have a lot of ways of killing, but we can't, you know, Oswald Philibender is able to eat Stax pieces and turn them into other things. So if a Stax piece goes south, they can get rid of it.
Yep.
Magda is able to tutor stuff onto the board, so they can wait until the last possible moment to get the right piece in play.
Yep.
And so I think Stax, if it's something that you're interested in, I would highly encourage people to start adding 1 or 2 Stax pieces at a time, see how they feel, and see how good you are at playing around them. I think Stax is also an archetype that if you really want to excel at it, you need to have a good relationship with your opponents. And you need to be able to have like a good walls down conversation afterwards, where you can like have a conversation with them of how effectively you actually stopped them. Because I just think that's like important information that you need to have access to in order to evaluate yourself as a Stax player meaningfully.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Especially identifying it after identifying the situation afterwards. All right, let me,
but it's a super powerful archetype, and yeah, I think Mike wants to jump in.
Yep, let me get Mike up here.
Get in here, Mike. Mike.
Hump day. I pressed the button. That's such a weird thing. He should be up here.
He jumped in, and then he immediately got kicked out or something.
Yeah, you might be having issues. I pressed the invite to speak button. Why don't you disconnect Mike and then reconnect, and I'll invite you up here.
Yeah, I have a deep appreciation for the Stax players in our community. I think it's a really, really important archetype in general, but also I think it is, an aspect of Modern Brain that does really well too.
All right, Mike's here.
Hello?
Hey.
There you go.
Mike?
Yeah, yeah. With regards to stacks, it's very important to know it's really a knowledge check before you play any stack space. Consider what cards are inside of each deck. So it's very discouraged for a new player to play stacks unless they're really familiar with their local meta or what they're playing against. Because sometimes I really have a hard time winning with stacks if it's a commander that's not I'm experienced with. Like one time I played with Kisha, and because I played a certain stats piece, I gave the game to that player. It was really bad for me.
Is that Ishai?
Yeah, Ishai.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, no.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will have stories like that. I would highly encourage people, if you are on a Stax game plan, your opportunity to politically interact with the table is before you cast the Stax piece, not after. Because once it's on the board, you have kind of like used up your space in the conversation, right? Like once the null rod's out, you it's really, really difficult to get rid of. But you can start the conversation with, I have a null rod and I believe that I need to cast it. Kinnan, is there anything you need to tell me before I cast this null rod? that kind of stuff.
Yeah, is there anything you need to show me? Basically, it's a free get pro. You don't have to pay the man. You don't have to even play life for it. You just got to threaten it.
All right. But yeah, I think that Stax, I think will reward or punish you almost more than any other archetype based on the amount of game knowledge that you have access to, both
Right.
inside of the game and outside of the game. That's a really, really good point, Mike.
Yep. It's just like control. Except with stacks, you have to see the future in addition to threat assess appropriately.
Yeah. So that's why I just want to point it out that stacks is not good for players who are not experienced about
Right.
where they're playing with.
Agreed.
I do think it's really tempting though, because like especially if someone has been stacked out in a game before, especially if they're kind of green behind the ears in their CDH experience, um, they want to like take the reins. They want to be the person who then like shuts other people out.
Yep.
And I think stacks can be very deceiving because you're like, oh, you just played 2 artifacts, then no one gets to cast anything. How hard can it be?
Right.
And I don't think you truly understand how much decision making goes into it until you are behind the reins, and until
You lose
you
a lot
have
of
that
games.
experience of giving away wins upon wins upon wins, and none of them were yours.
Yeah. No. I'll actually. Uh, I agree with that. My initial like foray into Magda was to play hard stacks specifically because I thought limiting my opponent's game actions was the most powerful and also gratifying thing you could do in CDH. Um, so I'm a prison player and I enjoy it, and just not jamming stacks is a skill, right? So let's go into the cards a little bit. Like cards that are these are listed in no real order. So I'm just gonna point at the ones that I think are kind of core and like non-negotiable if you're like even angling in that direction. Um, so specifically, Tabernacle. I know some people have cut it. I find it very very good. It almost always feels good, especially into blind metas because you have so much Kinnan and uh, Timnathras. In the Year of Our Lord, Enduring Vitality, it feels pretty good. Um, Root Maze is also one that I don't really ever want to consider cutting because it's a 1 mana asymmetrical stacks piece after you get another piece. It feels pretty good. Oh man, Abhorrent Oculus. What deck is that, Astro? Is it a
That's
Cephros?
Rockdrass. Is the Rockdrass? I bet it's Rockdrass. Oh, Timnathras. Oh, good for them.
I know, I love that card so much. Um, Realistically, it's Tabernacle, Root Maze, and Collector Oof, which are the ones that are. I guess Strip Mine. People pretty much always play Strip Mine. I wouldn't call it a stacks piece. It's more like a prison piece. Highly recommend the play pattern of holding your Strip Mine to work as a pseudo silence. Yeah, no. I agree with you, Mike. Playing Tangle Wire into a meta that has Magda is pretty spooky. Um,
Yeah, don't do their dirty work for them.
no, absolutely not. Yeah, don't. Oh no, I have to tap my. Oh, what dwarves? Um, yeah, but I wanted to say that a strip mine can operate a lot like a pseudo, um, operate like a pseudo silence because you can take your opponents off the lands they need to interact with you on your turn. So I highly recommend utilizing that play pattern against like the white player or the white blue player or the Bant plus player. It's very powerful. I don't think a lot of these cards are particularly excellent, even in like stack decks. I don't think anyone should be playing all of these cards. I don't think this is like a package. I think this is more like a buffet. Um, you pay you
Yeah.
stacks is one of those things is that you are packing silver bullets for the meta, and if your meta doesn't have any werewolves, you've packed the wrong bullets. Uh, 4 cards from the left. Four cards from the left. So that's Hall of Gemstones. That basically makes everyone's lands tap for a single color on their turn. Um, So at each upkeep, they choose a color, and their lands all their lands tap for that color if they tap for mana, which is very good at sometimes. Not so great other times. It's 3 mana. It's a little specific. It's double green. It's not really land fix or like green fixing for you because it costs double green to begin with. Yeah, it doesn't shut down colorless, but not that super matters. Not producing the color they want to produce is way more germane than them having colorless for like a random colorless matters card, which is not very common. 3 ball is a good protection piece. It operates like Dosen. You can't tutor it out though, so it's a lot worse than Dosen. So if you don't have Dosen, you're considering running 3 ball, run Dosen first, because there are going to be situations where you have a tutor and have your combo already, and you'd be able to tutor out a valuable protection piece rather than 3 ball, which is really only great when you're shifting Woodlandsing into it. Otherwise, Karn's pretty playable in this deck because of how big Lumra is and how she has reach and vigilance. Like, so you really can't get punished. They have to trade. Null Rod is a solid second oof, but it's up to you whether you want to play it. If you go down on those artifact like combo enabler cards or grind cards like Alter Dementia and Staff of Completion, it's probably worth. They're kind of mutually exclusive in my opinion. How many thoughts so far, Eric? I know I'm kind of rapid firing these.
Oh no, you're doing a great job. An important aspect to kind of touch on is exactly like what Drew said. Kind of going back to the thesis of this open season session is the point of this is kind of not to say that, oh, if you want to call yourself a Stax player, you've got to be on every single one of these cards. If you're on most of them, I don't even want to talk to you. No, this is more of like as we're trying to evaluate archetypes, right, and different builds of Lumra, it's beginning to seem like most people should have at least some aspects of Stax because of the relationship of the color that Lumra's in with the rest of the CDH meta. Which is why I think the vast majority of people are on at least Tabernacle, Strip Mine, and a few other pieces. In addition to that, if based off of what's going on in your pod, you feel like you need to include more, these are the particular Stax pieces that people in the community have been testing and have been seeing some really, really strong reactions, I guess.
Minus Orbit Dreams, I'll put that in there because I like it.
Orbit Dreams, I don't know if anyone's really playing Hall of Gemstones either.
If anyone would be testing, it'd be me. It's not a particularly great card. It's like an expensive root maze.
And so, ideally there will be two reactions to this. When you're looking at someone's list and you see that they're not on Root Maze, your first thought might be, why aren't they on Root Maze? Root Maze is a great card. Scroll up from the enchantments, look at their artifacts, see that they're on Cursed Totem, and think to yourself, well, they still are putting Stax pieces in their list. It looks like they're just using a different aspect of the archetype to hit their current meta. The other avenue that hopefully people would use this as is a kind of window into the direction that we see Lumra going, and this is a very open window, and so I would highly suspect that these are just 12 cards that me, Drew, and Alec kind of like put together, and we're going to ideally keep this kind of a running updated list, and so if you're in a deck that is moving towards Stax, that these are cards that you might be interested in, or that if you are talking to people or talking to other Lumra pilots and they're interested in Stax, that you can use this as an avenue to kind of have a more open conversation with them. And if they're like, wow, Titania's Song is just crushing it every single game I'm in, then oh, well, have you considered Null Rod? If you really like Titania Song, you might also really like that effect in your list as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Oh, someone wants to talk. I actually don't know who that is. I'm in streamer mode, so you'll introduce yourself when I'm up here. When you're up here.
Hey guys, what's up? It's PKP.
Oh yeah, hey.
Adam, if y'all don't know me.
What's up, bro?
What's up, Eric? Yeah, so Stax is definitely one of the archetypes that I feel we have to have a way to remove our own stacks if we need to. Just one reason I hate Null Rod. I can't get rid of the Null Rod. Collector Oof, I can get rid of that to enable somebody else to be able to stop a player who's trying to win. Right? Because, I mean, with all of our creature sack options that we run, generally we can get rid of that pretty easy, and it's definitely an early game shutdown for a lot of decks. With the mainstream meta of where everything is at in CD8.
Yep.
Tabernacle, I don't know why anybody would ever pull Tabernacle out. It's a 3-sack outlet for your Lumra.
Yep.
It's absolutely devastating. Kinnan doesn't care about it so much once he finally gets the Enduring Vitality and a couple rocks on board. So that's the only one that really doesn't care about the Tabernacle. But yeah, that was the only thing. And then having the stacks that you can bring back in Upkeeper and other people's, places with the Shifting Woodlands and their turns is devastating. That's why I like Titania Song in my graveyard. I hate it on my battlefield, but I love it in my graveyard. Because
the most consistent reason I see people cutting Tabernacle is because they're in proxy unfriendly environments. I don't know if I've heard anyone cut it yet because they don't like the way it feels. But yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with you about the kind of graveyard aspect. In that, like, being able to Shifting Woodlands a stacks piece puts us closer in that Magda style of stacks of you don't even have to activate it. Like, someone goes for a line and you can just like communicate to them like, bro, look at my library, look at my board, look at my graveyard. Like, you do the math, bro. Like, you're not that guy. Like, don't.
Yeah. If you make us both go, if I have to go shields down to stop you, player C is gonna win. So don't do it. Right. Like that's the thing. Also, the thing about stacks I want to lay out is that you will have a gun in your hand at all times. You get to show people the gun. You get to run people's pockets because you have the gun. You get to say, you're going to give me a reason why I need to keep this up, and the Kinnan player is going to show you that he has a force of vigor in hand and that he can hard cast, but only if he has his mana rocks up. Right? Like that's the kind of free information you get just from just having the card, and you don't have to pay mana for it. You just get to show people something you were going to play anyway, and then decide not to play it and get information and develop instead.
Exactly. Right? Yep. One of the other best things that feels so good to do: strip mine your own Tabernacle and the player's in step before you, so that way it doesn't affect you.
Yeah. So good. It
feels so good.
People get so angry. They get so angry.
And then just bring it back.
Bring it back. But yeah, I definitely would agree with your earlier point. I think it's one of the things that prevents us from being like a kind of dedicated stack is that we're not able to get rid of them. Because I think in order to be kind of like a dedicated stack, like let's say like Urza, you need to be able to transition your stacks pieces in and out as necessary, as well as translate them into like win conditions, which you can with Tabernacle or Strip Mine, because you can just strip mine your Lotus Field to create your infinite loops.
Right.
But we don't have the ability to like Birthing Pod, a Curse Totem like Oswald does. We can't tap a Trinisphere for mana like Urza, which isn't to say that we shouldn't be running them. It is to say that I would encourage people to exercise a little bit of caution if stacks is your plan A.
100%.
Yep, I agree.
Appreciate it, guys.
Yep, thanks for hanging up. All right, so moving on to midrange. Yeah, well, Laztip Core is also kind of an uncuttable right now, so mid-range is the king of grinding. We'll get back to that. I just wanted to show you guys the cards before we go into the kind of quadrants here. Mid-range is the same here as it is in other places. Establish a value engine, establish something that's going to get you continual value, whether that's Life from the Loam, Tortoise, Nantuko, Storyteller, even. Like something that's going to draw you cards or get you lands, mill you cards, like, you know, get you a card advantage engine in some way. And usually that that often ends up being something that's going to fill your graveyard because it is your second hand. One of the strengths of it is that it is, and this is more of a Lumra specific thing rather than a mid-range specific thing, but the mid-range deck gets more chances. It's slower at finding those chances, but it gets more chances while also not interacting too much with your opponent's ability to win the game. So it makes more windows because it's doing more. It's doing more things to see more cards in graveyard and in hand. But it can pivot a little bit. So that's one of its benefits, that it can go faster if it needs to. You get being a mid-range deck gives you the opportunity to tailor it into like a mid-range Staxy version or a mid-range Turbo version. If you're familiar with Magda, you know this game. It will be pretty familiar that your deck is never really a true mid-range deck unless you intentionally make it so. It's some amalgam of the 2 or 3 different archetypes, because you're just taking all of the really good value engine cards and then kind of picking a speed, like a default play speed, whether that's slower or faster or medium. Midrange also has like higher card quality. It's generally doing more things to propel your game plan consistently, and is doing what the other good mid-range decks are doing, albeit with worse cards because we're in mono green. Yeah, no, the Nantuko and Turtle is hilarious. There's not a whole lot of things wrong with the cards in your deck. Like the benefit of mid-range is that you're just playing high card quality. They're not relying on synergy, so it's not like you're ending up with cards that need an A plus B to be functional. There are a couple of cards that are just like value cards or require a little bit of setup, but those are just kind of the worst of the mid-range cards, if for lack of a better word. It's not like endemic to the archetype. The only other weakness is that it doesn't really, because it's not trying to go under, it's going to get outpaced by 3 and 4 color decks somewhat often. But it's not doing anything to interact with the table. So you're not taking advantage of green's like effective Staxy artifacts. So you're not really stopping blue from winning on turn 4. Otherwise, it's just that green is worse than having green plus 3 other colors. That's really, and the value engines are therein much worse. So let's go back up to the cards. Before that, Eric, do you have any more thoughts on like the ups and downs on mid-range?
I really agree with and would sympathize with like a lot of your observations. I would encourage people to think of like this in terms of like when you're going for your win condition. Like with Stax, it's once you've removed all your options from your opponents. With mid-range, right, it's not that you aren't deploying Stax pieces. It's not that you aren't trying to like turbo out a bunch of value engines. but this does mean that you are going to be making a win attempt around the same time that a lot of your opponents are. Um, and so I think it really, really is important that as you're evaluating pieces in the deck, that this is when it's most important to start comparing the deck to other really, really popular decks. Like, if you are trying to win around the same time that Blue Farm is, I think it is going to be more important to have things in your deck that can deal with like specifically Blue Farm. Or if you are trying to put like draw engines in like Heartwood Storyteller or things like that, how is it going to work when there are like 3 or 4 Rhystic Studies in play? And that is going to make, I think, this kind of the most generically good and generically bad of all the other archetypes. But I do think it also gives the most room for brewer expression with things like Shigeki or like Emrakul.
Right. A couple of the cards I wanted to pick on were Emrakul and Eldrazi Confluence, and I guess, yeah, personally I don't think Shigeki's very good. I think he's a little slow, even if he's like kind of a low cost inclusion. I think um, like Emrakul and Eldrazi Confluence are asking for a specific setup, I guess. And while that setup's pretty regular, it often presents like interesting sequence situations. Like Emrakul, you've already gotten like 3 or 4 card types in the graveyard. You already have a Lumra on the battlefield, and you are prepared to pop off. You just need to remove the Esper plus character player from the game by ruining their day and stealing their hand. Eldrazi Confluence is much the same way. It's a good removal piece, but it's mostly a value card. But you can only use it, post Lumra, which limits its value. Like if you're using it to remove a Drannith, you're not feeling very good. If you're using it to remove a Dothy, you're hoping that you also already have Lumra out before you do that, which you may not want to, because if you're powering out Lumra, you might be using a soul land to do that, and that's a sacrificed land that's going to the Shadow Realm. So there's something to think about there in regards to like Eldrazi Confluence. PKP mentioned that Emrakul is hard to play if you don't know the deck of the player you were taking control of. I did this in Hberg, drew into a win on the turn, but didn't know that I had it. So that's also it is a knowledge check card for sure. But I think anyone that's like really interested in playing Emrakul probably can figure that out with enough reps. Another thing about the archetype that I want to talk about is because it's so grinding focused, you're gonna see the highest density of just instant mill cards. Blossoming Tortoise is an auto include. Nantuko is pretty much an auto include. I'm not gonna say it must be. 6 is a auto include, but cards like Life in the Loam, Bazaar Baghdad, and like Oracle Moldiah, not being mill cards, but like pulling cards off the top and getting stuff onto the battlefield, like just generally increasing the amount of cards you see. That's what this archetype excels at, and that's why you'll see a higher density of these cards, because you want one in every single hand, preferably every single mulligan. Like most of these cards fit a very similar use case in the deck, so they don't individually do something very different for what you're you kind of want you want the density if you're in this archetype. And almost everyone is going to be leaning mid-range with some version of their deck. There's very few hard stacks decks, and I don't think mono green turbo, like pure turbo, really exists. So there's going to be probably 6 of these cards in every single deck. Maybe not the same 6 cards, but probably 6 of them.
For sure. I think that this is Um, the mid-range cards that are in your list, and I completely agree, Drew. Everyone, and I try to stay away from like universal statements, but just based off the nature of the deck and the nature of how CDH works, everyone, capital E, everyone is going to have aspects of mid-range cards in their list. I think mid-range cards are the ones you are most likely to keep in longer than they deserve based off of positive experiences or to cut prematurely because of negative experiences. Um, totally fine. Get it. Um, like we all have like pet cards, but I think it is extremely important here that if someone really likes or really dislikes a card that you are on the opposite side of, I think is potentially the most important area to kind of check that bias of like, I cast Oracle Moldiah, it did nothing. Ipso facto, I hate everyone who plays it. Like,
Yeah, and
yeah.
yeah, no, I definitely agree there.
But that's all to say is that like there are going to be some that I think have the tendency to shine more than others. I think Blossoming Taurus is a great example. But also this deck has such a plurality of like win lines, and so many of them are tutor based.
Yep.
That if you like don't always have 6 in the back of your mind, you're not gonna really see it or utilize it that often, as opposed to like if you've played Blossoming Tortoise, you love Blossoming Tortoise, it's going to be the best man in your wedding, Blossoming Tortoise. You are more likely to see the good aspects of those cards. And so if someone loves Springheart Nantuko, it's not your responsibility to be like, oh, I need to convince them to hate this card as much as I do. More so that like, what is it that they see here that I don't?
Right. Yeah, no.
And I think that dynamic is most likely to pop up with mid-range cards.
Yeah, I highly recommend getting someone to convince you why their favorite like card is good is probably well worth your time relative to trying to convince them that their favorite card is bad. Let's to put it that way, because I think if you think it's bad, you're probably not playing it. Also, yes, the turtle would look great in a bow tie. So, you know, I'm sure he does weddings. Is there any card here I want to talk about specifically aside from? I think everything else gets covered in like a package card. I don't think Heartwood Storyteller ends up anywhere. So let's talk about that card for a second. How have you found it? Have you cut it already?
I think I'm still on it. I've got to double check. Personally, I'm a big fan. I think it's definitely like a philosophy thing. My favorite way to solve problems is by creating new ones, which Heartwood Storyteller is really good at creating problems.
It certainly is.
I also think that I'm an incredibly like political player.
Yeah.
And so I have just like played the card and then stopped other people dead in their tracks. Where like Heartwood Storyteller hasn't drawn a single card, but it's because there's an Elsha player who recognizes that they will lose the game if they start storming off. And so um I find that like we don't cast a ton of spells that cause people to draw off Heartwood Storyteller when you get a ton of cards. I think this is a great example of if you are on cards like Mana Bond that lets you put 18 lands from your hand onto the battlefield, you know it'll be really good. Or if you're on like Life from the Loam and you have ways of transitioning card draw into Dredge, that would be really good. But if you're on like a Staxier game plan, then I think that like you may find that Heartwood Storyteller kind of like works against you,
Yep.
as well as if you are not a very political player and you don't feel comfortable kind of reining in the rock side player, you'd rather just like sit back, wait until your moment comes, win, wash your hands, go on to the next pot. I think that's a great example that Heartwood Storyteller may not generate the type of games that you will have the most fun playing.
Right. I think I agree with that, because Heartwood Storyteller feels like a risk to me. And while I'm a political player, I like to use stacks to do that. And if if you can use politics to create windows for yourself, Heartward Storyteller looks a lot more attractive. So I totally get that assessment.
Yeah, me and Alec have both had the experience that on average, if we're able to resolve a Heartwood Storyteller, we win. But I think, uh, you know, Wadi is a player I've talked with a bunch of. You would feel comfortable chiming in. Who I believe you've kind of like self-assessed yourself as not being like a super political player, or that you don't think like politics are your strong point. And so I imagine for you, if you'd feel comfortable speaking to it, that Heartwood Storyteller is a card that you would, yeah, probably represents way less opportunity for you.
All right.
Yeah, what he says it scares him.
Mm-hmm.
Element.
Yeah, no, it's a spooky card. All right, so let's.
And so that's where like if someone's like, oh, I don't like Heartwood Storyteller, I don't like disagree with the fact that you don't like it, Wadi. Like that's not it's not my responsibility to like police your opinions on stuff.
All right, so let's pop over to Turbo. Probably the least. I don't know. Maybe there's more Turbo players than I think of, but I feel like the Stax midrange is Stax and midrange, and some combination of the two tends to be like where most people live right now. Not that there's anything wrong with it, because we just need people to explore. But let's hop over to Turbo. So here are our cards. We'll also talk about we have Storyteller here as well, but we'll talk about that later. Let's go to the we're here. The goals of Turbo is that they are trying to get like a turn 2 Lumra and a turn 3 or 4 like win attempt, and play a lot of cards that propel you very, very quickly. The non-bows is that there's a lot of dead cards. If you're playing Turbo, you're probably playing a lot more A+B stuff, or just Jamet cards that get blown out. You absolutely do get a lot more value out of your mulligans if you're playing Turbo, because you can fish for those crazy starts. The thing that I would say is like biggest weakness is that you don't have a whole lot of like follow-up attempts as midrange does, because you're not generating as much value. You're not like getting to kind of coast on a whiff. If you don't get there, it feels like the turn 1 Rog wheel that just like gives them garbage, right? They or wheels your opponent into good stuff when you got worse stuff. It just plays riskier cards in general. Like a lot riskier.
Yeah, I can jump in here if you want, Drew.
Please.
The way I've described it, I've talked about with Logan a lot, is I think Turbo Lumra inspires players to play poorly. Like it's really scary, and there's a lot of horror stories floating around. I think in the same way that in CDH, people who don't play CDH always talk about Roxai is winning like turn 0, right? That's not true. That doesn't happen. I mean, maybe it happens like once in a blue moon, but like its strength really is kind of in those like turn 1 wheels. And I think that comparison of like a Roxai playing 2 rocks and then wheeling is a great example of all the pros and the cons of Lumra Turbo.
Mm-hmm.
I know that PK actually had an experience in Heisenberg where they had what I would consider a relatively safe Mycosynth LED cast. What they had in hand and on board wasn't representing like any real win attempt. It was just an early Lumra, and it ended up getting Force of Willed, and they were just out of the game, right?
Yeah.
As like Lumra pilots, I imagine many of us in that pod could pretty sufficiently excess that that's just the wrong play, like kind of holistically. But based off the threat that it represents, it is, and I think this is important thing to come back to. It is inspiring the opponents to play poorly. And also, I'd very much agree with you. Its strength is that if um if you have a staff of domination in hand, um, you cast Lumra and then you mill Selvala, like you just win. Like your commander causes Selvala to tap for like 12 mana. You just have it on board.
Right.
But also you end up in a lot of these situations, where you have an untapper and you're trying to find a land sack outlet, and instead, you draw your mana bond and you're like, oh man, if I had any other card, I would win here.
It has the worst top
Um,
decks of
mhm.
the like. I would rather have more like stack pieces are usually good in triplicate. Turbo cards that like abuse different uh, parts, game pieces like mana bond abusing, getting you a lot of lands into the play. LED putting them all into putting all your or basically just different parts of the game. They may not be useful at the same time, and if you draw into them, you'll end up just like kind of okay. Well, I tried once, didn't get there, and now I'm doing nothing. That's the kind of
Yeah.
it gets worse the fewer colors you have, and we are not in a good turbo colors. That said,
Mhm.
and
So,
I'll bring you up here in a second, PK. I want to speak to my experience. I played a more turbo variant. My first game playing Lumra, I played LED Mycosynth on my kept 6 or second 7, I think. Wheeled into a Field of the Dead, or got a Field of the Dead with my mill, and had 12 lands on turn 2 with like uh, 6 zombies. So that's all to say that I think everyone should try it. It's like playing. It's like driving a sports car when you're not when you have no reason to have a sports car. You should still feel what it
yeah.
feels like. You should huff the entire mountain of blow at least once, but realize that it's not likely the best thing to do. Well, let me get PK up here while you say your piece, Eric.
That's a really good analogy. Yeah, I used to work at Ace Hardware, and I did a lot of. I was responsible for like testing pool water for people, like for chemicals and stuff like that. And the amount of people who bought a pool but didn't actually want one is a really, really high number of people, and they're just stuck with like it's a chore. Like every weekend they have to buy all these chemicals, and it costs money, and they're spending all this time doing things they don't want to do. And if you don't want a pool, don't put it in your backyard. If you don't want a sports car, if you don't want to pay an extra like 60 cents for gas, don't don't buy one. Just get a Honda Civic. They're great. They get stolen a lot, but they're pretty good. Um,
Yeah.
but it is fun. Really, really enjoy it. I do think final word, and then I'll let PK jump in. I think another good way for me is Stax. Um, cast Lumra when they're ready to win. Turbo casts Lumra as part of finding your win.
Yeah.
And then mid range just cast Lumra whenever they want.
Yeah. No. I when it's convenient, I guess. Yeah, for sure. PK.
Right?
Sorry for like triggering your Vietnam flashback there, but
No, it's perfectly fine. So the whole context with all of that, it was round 2. I had just won the first round on turn 3 with Lumra. Um, I'm in the pod with Wounded Satellite,
oh, fun.
and before the game even starts, he hyped the bear up so hardcore against with everybody else in the deal. Because I've played with Wounded several times, multiple times. He's watched me play Lumera on Breakfast Club a lot of times, and he scared the other 2 players about how fast Lumera can be. He's like, don't
Mm-hmm.
let the 6 mana, fool you. This deck is extremely fast, and then I kept a really stupid hand. I 100% I know I shouldn't have kept the hand. First 7, Michael sent the LED. Like,
The blow
screw
was
it.
there,
I'm up.
man.
I'm
The
I'm up a
baggie was
game.
on the table. It was open.
You
They
know.
even left the dollar bill out for you.
It's like
Yeah.
I'm up a game. Why not? Um, but I honestly feel that if Wounded hadn't hyped the bear up so much before the game, I could have convinced the player who ended up force willing my Lumra to
Hold
to
it.
not, because I literally I discarded 2 other lands, both colorless lands, and I was like tried to politic saying I'm basically playing a 6 mana ramp spell right now with the hope that I hit a couple lands because I'm in top deck mode.
Yeah.
And that's the key, because 100% I have completely snorted the entire mountain of blow with Lumra, but just like you did, except I had the Field of the Dead and nothing but 6 other lands in my hand.
Right.
It was Mycosynth Gardens, Field of the Dead, LED, and then 3 other lands in my hand. So 100%, that is amazing when you can do that. And I think actually one of the other lands was a Vesuva.
Right.
So it was making double Field of the
yeah.
Deads.
Exactly what happened my first game, my first ever game on Lumra. I joined the server to describe my experience because I hadn't joined the server yet, and then I was like, is this what it's like? Is this like I'm jonesing? I'm looking for the next one.
Yep.
I want to talk.
So definitely just do not do it. I mean, do it once.
Yeah.
But if you're in a big tournament, do not keep a Mycosynth LED hand.
Yep.
100% don't do it.
It's very much
your
trap.
Mycosynth is better served as a copy of Tiller Engine or a copy of Amulet of Vigor, not a copy of LED.
So I actually want to use your experience here as and relay some of my experience playing Magda as like the most hated deck in hated out deck in cEDH. You have to find strategies for the counter hype. You have to be more educated and a better communicator than every opponent that you play against, because early rounds is where people like Ian and Wounded and Freedom will take what they know about your deck and create a super predator infomercial about how you are going to steal their lunch money and wreck their car. Right.
100%.
And you have to be better at counter programming their nonsense. And I'm just gonna give you an example because that's what worked for me with Magda. Tim, Gold Sabertooth made some Magda treasure tokens. He had a Patreon, a Patreon exclusive gold one, and then a bunch of red ones. I made the executive decision in round 1 of a tournament to say, all right, here are my treasures. You're going to see all these treasures. I have one of these, this golden right here. This is my winning treasure, right? If you don't see that, I am not winning. You do not have to worry. I am playing it 100% straight right now, and I want you guys to be considerate with your removal. And you know what? I had one of my opponents tell I had player B tell player C he's not playing his gold his winning treasure. I think we're fine. And you know what? I won the next turn because I didn't get blown out on the turn turn prior. We're a very layered deck and not an I don't think we're an incredibly linear one. So it's harder to say here's your doom clock. I will tell you when it's going to hit 12, right? You don't have that, but the community and the people in it need to find language that is effective, brief, and explicit, and hopefully, if we can nail this, visual. Something that tactile and visual, and something that our opponents can like see on the board and say, okay, we're okay. We don't need to kill the bear right now, right?
Yeah, 100%. If you're going to play the turbo version of Lumra, you have to be very swift with your tongue. You have to be able to outpolitic the other bigger names that are more recognized in the community than what you are on a Lumra, right? Because I didn't that time. I mean, I tried. If Wounded wasn't in the pod, I could have 100% gotten away with it. But all I did by doing that play was just prove Wounded correct, right? About how explosive and how fast the stupid bear can be.
Right.
So yeah, if you're gonna play the turbo version, you have to be swift with the tongue. You have to be able to counter hype it. I like Jumper's comment in there. You know, what cards do I have to hit that prove you right? You know, you're saying I'm this, I'm that, and everything else, but what do I have to hit? Tell me. So.
Right. Absolutely.
I think that's also a great. That's a great example of also like exactly like what Drew's saying. People who play Turbo, like I love Turbo Lumra. Turbo isn't the only thing that deck does, right? It's just one expression of it. And it's really important. You both have to be honest with the table, but you also have to be honest with yourself. If your game plan is out politicking Wounded Satellite, pick a different game.
You're not
Pick
gonna
a
do it.
different game. Yeah, like he has made his CDH career off of politicking. Um, and so I think that's a great example of kind of like you said. It's not that like LED Mycosynth is bad in the deck; is that it was bad in that situation. And that I think is something I hope I would take into future games. Is there's so many lines in this deck that you can tunnel vision on because they're so powerful and they're so consistent. But also, it really does rely a lot on perception. And I was talking to a comedian about Kinnan, and one of the things he was saying, and I think you've talked a lot about this about Magda Drew, is that he was saying Kinnan doesn't need a pilot, it needs a PR campaign.
Yes.
And I think sometimes Lumra needs that as well. And something I'm trying to bring into the games is that if my opponents are already having the conversation about like, oh, this deck puts up turn 2, turn 3 wins all the time, it is not my responsibility, nor should be my goal to prove them right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because
That's the worst thing you want to do is prove them right and validate their fears of the bear.
Right.
So
all I'll do is get right up to the edge, and then I'm gonna eat in endurance, and then we're all having a bad time now.
Yeah. I've been in that situation where they're all so scared of Lumra. Like I play with Freedom all the time. He's a local. I play with him at least twice a week, pretty much. And everybody, there's a Magda in our local meta. Everybody is so scared of the bear when I sit down. It's like I'm automatically public enemy number 1, regardless of who's there. So you just always got to kind of step back and just play that mid-range game more so than trying to turbo that bear out.
Yeah. Yep. If someone is trying to like fearmonger, the most powerful thing you can do is just say, look, that's not what I'm about. That's not what I'm here to do. Like it don't give them more ammunition to use against you, right?
Yeah.
100%. If they spend 15 minutes hyping up a deck and then you spend 5 seconds land pass, they have like proven themselves to be a dishonest actor in the conversation.
Or less reliable.
And
my
so,
other question, sorry to throw this out there. I'm going to jump down after this, but why is Answered Prayers on this list?
Because it's a bear and a prayer, my friend.
Okay. All right.
So there's not that many turbo cards in this deck. I mean, we're in green. But yeah, thanks for talking again, buddy. It was a good sidebar. Awesome. I think I crystallized a little bit of through this conversation that I want to again. Everything goes back to dwarves for me because I translate a lot of what my experience through the lens of how to play a deck that is very much in the public eye in terms of like when you need to stop it and how people overreact to it, because it has such a win from the command zone reputation. If you win through a very uninteractable win line, and you are the first person to win or to attempt, and they could not stop you. If that's what your deck is about, people are just going to decide not to let you try, right? That's how they're going to react to you. But if you have a very uninteractable win line, and you slow roll, and someone else gets stopped by winning, but now you have less interaction at the table, and you are not the first person to attempt to win, well, buddy, you're just another player. You're just another deck at the table. You just attempted to win second. And so my suggestion to everyone is do what I do when I play dwarves. It is much better for you to spend the spinning the table at round 2 discussing how other people are dangerous than defending yourself from being the threat at the table because you decided to drop dwarf vehicle. I have 3 treasures on turn 2. Right? It's you're gonna lose that game. You're gonna get blown out. They're gonna do something. They're gonna tutor for what's the black green board wipe? Culling Rit.
Ritual.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah. They're gonna go grab Culling Rit and blow you the fuck out. So my suggestion, even with Lumra, which is fairly uninteractable, is just don't go balls to the wall without and develop the maximal amount of value you can every opportunity you can, because you feel like you need to make parity, because the best player at the table, meaning the person who yaps the best, is going to make the worst person at the table a gun to shoot you with, especially in rounds 1 and 2. The biggest threat to you is the politicking of the best player using the worst player as a lever against you, basically playing two-headed giant. And once you get to this bottom,
how true that is.
And once you get to the bottom table, bottom of the bracket with an 0-1 or an 0-2, your tiebreaks are gonna suck, and you're gonna bubble out instead of bubbling in. So you gotta preemptively avoid those situations by not jamming and being the scary. And 2, you have to you have to be good at reactively managing situations when that kind of like mental judo and mind control is happening at the table, because it will happen at the table, and you got to be better than your opponent at it, bluntly. All right, so I think that's
no, I just completely agree. Like, oftentimes I think we can trick ourselves into making bad decisions based off of like what's like optimal, like mana wise or mathematically, but then we forget to do the math of like, if I cast 6 spells, the 7th one is going to get countered, and so just like including that in your math, as well as I would completely agree with you. I think a lot of people here who have grinded a lot of tournaments have had this experience of the higher you get to the top in the rankings, the more those players are going to try to like politic people into playing scared. And so if we can counteract that by encouraging people to play smart, I think that really, really helps. And a huge, huge, huge part of that is, once again, knowing that not everyone is playing turbo, but the deck is so powerful that even the Stax version still can turbo out wins. Just exercising a little caution and not giving people undue ammunition to just start removing random pieces.
Right. Oh, I'm gonna path the reclaimer when Kennan's got 3 pieces on board, kind of thing. Yeah. Which it'll happen. I've watching Kennan get away with fucking murder is like it's like being a second class citizen. I'm gonna be real, playing like dwarves and watching the Kennan just like break every law known to man and God, and so let's
say the same thing too.
let's move on to packages now. Realistically, these cards are very situational. I think Turbo is the most I'm gonna say specific build. You're probably gonna be playing quite a few of these just because there's not that many good Turbo cards. But realistically, the ones that are like I think the best here is obviously LED Mycosynth Mana Bond. Mesmeric Orb is very good, but it is also very dangerous. It's kind of a like it's super good but very dangerous. Like it's hard to undersell how easily you can hand the game to a red deck. Sylvala and Staff of Domination obviously are a very good AB, but you can only tutor one of them, so you're just kind of like doing the shifting. You're just kind of milling until you get to the shifting. Yeah, no. Astro, I 100% agree. Mesmeric just kind of like gives Rogsai too many games. That's why I probably wouldn't play it. So I think, as someone who doesn't have a whole lot of experience with Turbo, I would say that it just feels. I don't feel like we have density of good cards to just hope and pray. But that's just me. Obviously, I'm a Stax mid-range player. All right. So let's pop over to packages. This we'll rapid fire these a little bit more. But this has been, we've made good time. I expected about 3 hours, and I think we're gonna get there or so. So anti-artifact is one where you're probably not taking all of these. You're probably taking a certain probably a significant portion of these, maybe 3 or 4. I think there are arguments for cards like Mangle, but I don't love the card. I mean, it does usually stop the Wincons, but it doesn't stop development. It just slows development. Null Rod and the Oof just stop development, which I like. Bane, I think, belongs in other decks, personally. Bane of Progress. I think we have too many good artifacts that don't activate that we don't want to kill them all. It's kind of the same reason that Titania Song is a tenuous card. Because you really don't want to turn off your amulet. Because amulet's the most searchable of your 4, or of your 3 untappers. Because Urza Saga is very searchable as well. Like we've talked about before, Karn's very easily protected, but it's 4 mana, so it's like maybe run Null Rod first. That's kind of how I feel. Currently, I'm only on Null Rod, Oof, and Titania Song for anti-artifact stuff. It really depends on like what you're trying to target in terms of like, and what kind of decks you can expect, like what they're gonna dodge. Like if you want an extra Oof, you grab Null Rod. If you want to, limit the value of treasures, or really punish like Hazel Brewmaster style stuff, you can play Titania Song too. Karn is obviously good but targetable, so it's like there's a couple of reasons to play Karn over Titania Song. If you're trying to keep cards like Staff Completion or Altar of Dementia, maybe play Karn over Titania Song. But Titania Song is also very good at being bounce proof. You can't be Flood Mod because the effect maintains throughout the end of the turn, which means they can't go off at sorcery speed. If they can go off with instant speed, they can just wait until end step triggers. But there's a couple of reasons why you'd go for one over the other. But like I said, you're probably not running all of these. You're probably running 3 of these. Any extra thoughts there, Eric?
No, I think you summarized it super duper well. If you are on all of these, I hope that whoever hurt you has received justice via the legal system.
Right. Yeah. No. Absolutely.
Otherwise, you gotta stop.
Yeah.
But you definitely should be on at least like one or 2.
Yeah. I think Oof and Titania Song are probably the most obviously good.
I would agree. Yeah.
Null Rod's probably very close behind Titania Song. It's just it can't be bounced is really important. That's like the most consistent removal pieces right now are like Into the Flood Maw and Chain, right?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, so let's move on to the next. Rootpath. So we mentioned this card, and I don't remember who initially turned us onto it and was like, "Nah, you really gotta check this out." But it's a really cool fucking sequence. So Rootpath read.
It was Silent Island.
I think it might have been, but bully to whoever it
Apologies
was.
if I'm wrong.
So Rootpath is a 3 and a green. It's a elf druid for a 3/4 elf druid. Lands you control and land cards in your library are basic. So what does that mean? Well, if there's any decent tutors, like forced basic tutors that you can run or otherwise would run, this card makes them unrestricted tutors to the battlefield, which is pretty fucking sick. And there's a couple of really cool lines where you can sacrifice, you can tutor for Fabled Passage, or have Fabled Passage, tutor for Echoing Deeps. Echoing Deeps is a copy of Fabled Passage, which untaps. Fabled Passage will untap your Echoing Deeps, so you can go do that. Then you can go grab something else. It's just another decent way to kind of do like the Elvish Reclaimer stuff, and just increase the tutor density in your deck without limiting or reducing your card quality all that much. Fabled is okay. Ghost Quarter was already an auto include. Yep, later, bud. Ash Barrens is a pretty great card that fixes pretty well. It's great at getting your second green source or your first green source if you're that hard up. It's a very good opener with Urza's Saga. I'll say that the Rootpath, it does cost a couple of lands. So you're losing probably 2, better lands outside of the combo, but you are getting, more land tutors to get stuff like, Fabled Passage into Echoing Deeps into Mirror Pool, copy your Lumra the next turn. Now you're doing it all over again to get more things, and you just won the game. Oh yeah, it also wins through Blood Moon, or helps you play through Blood Moon. There's I don't remember the exact rules. I know someone did do the deep dive there. With regards to how timestamping works. I'm not.
I believe there's a Google Doc and a pinned comment in the individual card discussion forum for Rootpath Purifier, written by Silent, who is, I think he's an L3.
Shout out to them, because that's good nerd stuff. I really enjoy when people get that deep into card interactions. It's haven't seen that since Goblin Welder stuff on Goblin Welder stuff with Magda. So it's really cool to see that. I think the conclusion that a lot of us come to is that this is at least worth testing, and it's probably only going to get better as better basic tutors come out and more, I guess, like Ghost Quarter style cards come out.
Yeah. It's not free. It costs slots.
Yep.
Like the cards that you're slotting in, like Ash Barrens, they're not like these awful do nothing cards. But it's not free, and so I think this is not like split in like a House Divided sense. But I do think this is going to be kind of similar to like a Life from the Lone 6 situation. It's going to be kind of, I think, primarily vibes based. Of people are going to play it, they're going to like it, it's going to feel really good. They will actively be tutoring for Rootpath Purifier, or people will play it. It seems like it's one more hoop to jump through that they don't really feel like doing, and so they end up not wanting to have it so that they can have Ominous Cemetery instead of Prismatic Vista. But I do think that, like, if your games, either if the deck is starting to feel a little bit stale, or if you feel like you're getting locked out or losing, you don't really understand why, I think you should try this. Even if you don't think it's very good, try it just so you can have a more informed opinion of why you don't think it's very good. but I think that this is going to continue to kind of grow and develop and result in players having access to new lines. And even if those are lines you don't really want to like be actively tutoring for, I do think that Rootpath chains are going to become part of the future of this deck. And I just want people to have more information about it.
To me, this feels like a more open and variable and I guess versatile like Goblin Engineer kind of card, to where it really turns a single card into a lot of different cards. And given we have such depth in our land base, that it can only be so bad, but it also has such an opportunity cost, such a a decently high opportunity cost of playing a 4-mana card, right? That's not exactly where you want to be, right? That it's going to probably have a median that's like above average, but not like it'll occasionally win you the game off of like an awesome opener, but it won't necessarily do so regularly. It just gives you a lot of choices and a lot of options to answer things, and we don't have that in our deck right now. Like, being able to tutor out the correct land is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And yeah, specifically the fact that Rootpath turns Fabled Passage into a universal tutor that causes it to enter untapped. Pretty hanging strong.
Yep.
I think this is one I would highly recommend. I think me and Drew have said most of what there is to be said, but I do think if you're interested, or even if you're already interested, go read the individual card discussion forum on this.
It's a good one
because there's been a lot of tech talked about it in there.
Yep. Silently did a really good job with that write-up of how it does the thing it does. All right, next package. Dredge and Value Mill. A couple of these cards are going to be like kind of automatic. Obviously, pretty much everyone's on Blossoming Tortoise, and I want to say like 90% of people that I've seen are on Aftermath. The thing is that cards like Hermit Druid and specifically Hermit Druid, it is a very spooky card, and it basically just puts you at a political deficit. Like, it's a win con, not for us, but for everyone else, it's a win con. It's like if there was a black deck out there playing decon but not trying to win the game with it. You know what I mean? And like, they never win the game with it, but every other time it's been seen in CEDH, it's a win con, and you have to react to it accordingly. We are actively including a trauma button into the deck when it doesn't even have the requisite power to justify it. It's just good in this deck. It's a very solid value piece. It's probably as good as Blossoming Tortoise, just a little bit slower, right? Doesn't combo as well as other as Blossoming Tortoise, for example, but it has like a very solid like one-shot use type of card or type of utility. I'll say that Loam and Bazaar are just really slow. They're good, but they're just really slow. We don't always have we're not always using our mana to begin with. Like, not all of it. We can sometimes find ourselves at a significant surplus without anything to dump it into, and this is something to dump it into. I'm not currently on Bazaar or Life from the Loam. I find that I want to have consistent draw effects with Life from the Loam to make it great. And Bazaar is kind of the best one, but separately they're not like my favorite. So I tend not to value them super highly. I'd rather just fill the graveyard other ways, or with cards like Tortoise. We included Malevolent Rumble in this list because it's probably the best of a class of pretty mediocre value cards. It's 2 mana, or it's realistically just a 1 mana, a mill 4 grab a card. That is pretty universal, but it's very like we're saying, it's not very high value. Its floor is whiff, and its ceiling is okay. You have any thoughts on the value mill stuff, Eric?
I know that Wadi tested a lot. He was also doing stuff with like cash grab and things like that. There's definitely like potential here, and I think there is a world where if you're doing more kind of like Earthcraft style things, like Malevolent Rumble is going to be able to like get a lot more bang for your buck. I think you make a lot of good points about Hermit Druid. If someone is like casting decon and they're like, they're saying, "Oh, I'm deconning here for interaction," that's pretty believable. If someone is tutoring for decon so they can decon for interaction, then you're like, okay.
Right. Right. Don't green suns for Hermit and expect it to be great. Go well for you, right?
Yeah. Blossoming Tortoise and Aftermath Analyst, I think, are about as close as we can come to kind of just like ubiquitously like in the deck cards. I think very similar to like Vigor, Amulet Effects. Not that you have to, but you kind of do. Aside from that, I think if you are in kind of grindier, sloggier metas, you'll probably be able to get a little bit more out of Bazaar or Life from the Loam. I like Bazaar because I will more often than not activate it so that someone who has an OBM can kill a Kinnan, that kind of stuff. But right, that's not value attached to the card. That's value attached to the pods that I'm in. And so I think the Dredge and value mill are going to be the ones I think have some of the most hidden value.
Yeah.
And so no shade to people who run them, no shade to people who don't. You know if you like them, and you know if you don't, and don't feel bad for being in either one of those camps.
I tend to agree with that. Like there's so many, like, again, being a layered combo deck means that every choice has 3 other like prerequisite choices you made, and just based on the deck that the play style that I play a lot of single card Wincons with like a pretty stout Stax package, so that I've locked my opponents out and then I'm just resolving a spell. And for me, I would rather just resolve practically anything else than a Bazaar or a Life from the Loam under those circumstances, because I think those are good grind cards, and I'm not necessarily trying to grind. I'm trying to resolve that 1 card Wincon in the or shifting it or what have you. And
yeah, absolutely.
two players
like
can't
if
respond.
If your game plan is to like resolve a scape shift, under no circumstances do you want Life from the Loam.
Right. I think I don't think they're mutually exclusive. They're not playing the same game.
Yeah, and so I think as someone who like I'm relatively uninterested in instants and sorceries, I'm trying to like keep the list focused around either cards being castable off of 6 from the graveyard or shifting woodlandable.
Yep.
Life from the Loam is great there, but if you're doing more Tempter Discovery, Realms Uncharted, Scape Shift kind of stuff, that's a good sign that you may not be able to get as much value out of these cards as you might want in order for them to be worth the slot they're taking up.
Also, you might just want more lands, and the lands the things you cut first in the high land count deck are the instants and sorceries most of the time. So it's very much there's a lot of build questions you have to answer for yourself before you even start evaluating these 2 specifically. All right. Speaking of compact Wincons, so Scape Shift, Tempter Discovery, they more or less speak for themselves. Scape Shift may be a little bit more obviously, you just kind of win the game right there. Tempt with Discovery is a little less obvious, or a little more variable, because it's allowing you to your opponents to make intelligent decisions to not let you win. Back in the olden days of like high power degenerate, the answer for Tempt with Discovery was everyone gets strip mine, and then strips mines your important lands, which is not really a real thing anymore. But the whole like kind of suicide pact around your Tempt means that it's a 4-mana get a land at the floor, and that's not good enough for 4 mana, in my opinion. I like playing under circumstances where if my opponents are good, my deck gets better. Not if my opponents are bad, my deck gets worse. Right? And I think generally these mono green decks that or these monocolored decks like Magda and whatnot, bad players end up making bad decisions that can punt games to better players. And because we don't have opportunities to to interact on the stack, we can't make up for those shortcomings of other players very easily. So I don't build my decks in ways where I'm hedging on my opponents making mistakes that are favorable to me. I'm trying to limit my exposure to my opponents making mistakes, and if my opponents play optimally, can I still win, right? And Tempt is very much a bad players give you things, good players probably won't. No one's, because lands is not like that important in CEDH. People's decks aren't built around them necessarily, so they're not doing like if someone else did a Tempt with Discovery, we can likely win off their Tempt with Discovery, right? So we would take that and we would just win before they win on top of them if they had a win going on. But most other people don't need it, so they won't take it. So you'll just spend 4 mana for an untapped land.
And at that point, like, just play something like Micro Spawn.
Yeah, no, definitely play that card. Card's cracked.
Yeah, not to say that people shouldn't play Tempt with Discovery, or that they shouldn't play Escape Shifter, things like this. More that like these are the situations in which like you're evaluating the cards, and yeah, Cavern of Souls is super good in our list.
Yep,
that's a really good point, Jumper.
That was a very good point.
I just. A lot of times people say like, oh, if you can resolve this, then you can just go get your win. Or they'll say, oh, if you resolve this spell and you have an untapper and you have a land sack outlet. And in my mind, if you have a land untapper and a land sack outlet, theoretically, like any card in the deck should win you the game, right?
Yep.
And so I think it's just important when we're talking about these compact win cons, to evaluate them under the circumstances of like our opponents are good opponents. They know what to counter. They're making wise and informed decisions, and we are resolving this spell not because people accidentally let it through, but because we have created a game state where they are unable to prevent us from winning.
That's why I like Realms, because Realms very much is that. You are getting rewarded for operating on top of the stack when your opponents have done something, just engaged in like a counter war, or someone else has a win on a stack and you have a Sakura Tribe Scout. Another reason to run a Sakura Tribe Scout is because Realm Uncharted exists, because you can you can get your third 2 of your lands from hand, 2 of your lands in hand, and they can't give you they can't. Realms Uncharted is kind of like Green's Savine Reclamation, in that it's kind of it's kind of Green's it reads like Gifts Ungiven, right? But it actually plays like Savine's, because doesn't matter what card they give you, it fixes the the piles are fixed. And I really like it for that reason, because you can just go over top. You can do this at your opponent's end step and go grab 4 cards for value, or you can just grab 2 cards and they have to go to the graveyard.
Pretty cool.
Oh yeah, no, so Jumper just asked the question. I don't know if you're going to discuss this later, but Untappers are slightly undervalued. I would call Tiller Engine, Amulet, and Splunking compact Wincons due to their ability to go infinite with a mirror pool plus a numerous amount of lands we run that sack themselves. So I want to discuss. Maybe I wasn't very clear with the from the outset with talking about these packages. We didn't build these packages with the intent of including auto-include cards for all builds that happen to coincide with these packages. I think the community opinion is that all of your Untappers are good, right? Your Spelunking, your Tiller Engine, your Amulet, you should be running those. So there's never really a deck building question there. This open season was meant to pose and answer, I guess, novel questions about deck building versus, yes, you should be running those cards. That's that it's kind of a foregone.
Yeah, if you're cutting Spelunking, you have brewed too close to the sun, my guy.
You have a pet card or 15 that you've included before that card. But yeah,
I don't care how much you like Scoot Swarm, it is not worth it.
Yeah. So just to button it up on Realms, I think it's a good political card that can get you Boseiju, or it's a good gotcha card. It's a good value card, and it works under all those circumstances. It is a 3-mana Tasigur it does the same thing that Tasigur does, except you get to go tutor them all. And you can just fail to find and then just set up your win for next turn. It's just it's a 1-card win con that you can politic your way around. Nature's Rhythm follows much the same kind of mindset. You're just kind of pushing for a win, and it even comes with a backup attempt. But if you're starting from 0, it can get you all the way there, right? Like a Lumra plus this card is kind of a win. We've talked about Nature Rhythm so much I don't think we need to dwell on it. Hermit Druid isn't really a win con, but it presents dumping so many cards into the yard. It's kind of like a coin flip. Not necessarily a 50-50. It's probably more like a 30-60. 30, like a 40-60 or a 30-70 likelihood that you're going to hit a density of cards that are going to just get you that snowball. It's the best snowball card in the deck outside of Mana Bond, I guess. But this one is useful successively and lets you see more cards. So if I had to choose the card that is the hardest to interact with while giving you a a politically useful amount of I don't necessarily win here amount of political capital to use, I would say Hermit Druid is that card, because you can say, I'm not going to 0, guys. I'm not Thoracling. Don't worry about it too much. I'm just valuing out. But it happens to be very cheap, mana wise, and it has the highest amount of card potential for milling. Right? It's like Keening Stone level of cards in the yard. How do you feel about that, Eric?
No, I can agree with you. I think it's pretty similar to Survival of the Fittest in a lot of ways, where it's it is you're gonna have to give up some sort of information when casting it.
Yep.
because it in and of itself isn't going to win you the game, but it's going to get you to something that will.
Yep.
And so, I think that like, if you're in Swiss at a tournament, this card never sees the light of day. But I think if you're playing regularly in a pod with like the same people, you can actually probably get a lot more out of this card.
I think this is an opportunity to play open hands, because you can say, I don't think I'm going to win here. I definitely can't win with what's in my hand. We might have put survival in this list if we had more slots. But I want to talk about that for a second, because survival I see in much the same light. The only difference is that this card can't really whiff. I mean, it can get you one card. It can get you literally one card or two cards. But that's okay. I guess that's not very likely. But what it can't, what survival can do is it can get countered by more counter spells, and it also can be a brick in your hand because you don't have another creature. I need to play my Saccharine Tribe Scout. I need to play my Delighted Halfling, but I don't have the opportunity to do so. And then survival for Tiller Engine, right? So
yeah.
that's a reason I'm not on it, is because I don't run enough creatures for it to be like exceptional.
Yeah. I think that like in order for Survival of the Fittest to really shine, you probably would want to be doing like Dryad Arbor Cloudstone stuff, and I don't think that's stuff we want to be doing right now.
Yeah.
Not to say that it's not an open avenue, but more so to say that is an aspect of these type of like Wincons that we have the potential to access in mono green, and amongst those you can compare them to the other ones on this chart, like Emrakul.
For the
so
record,
I would agree with that.
Oh.
Okay.
I was just going to say, for the record, I see Emrakul a little bit closer to a Dosen or a 3-ball than I do a Wincon, but it can be both.
Mm-hmm.
Go
yeah,
for it.
I think very similar to like the Stax or the value mid-range. I think our expectation, I'd go kind of back to like the thesis behind the kind of open season mentality, is more communicating the landscape of where we see things currently being with Lumra, as opposed to like prescriptive, like where we think, like, oh, you should be running all of these cards. I think I'm only on one of these cards actually. No, two, I'm on two. But that's just like me. That's where my deck's at. And our goal with this is, as we continue to move into like more sets and more play styles, and we discover new tech, to continually update this so that as people join the community, we're able to update it, reference it, and continue to utilize it.
Yep, agreed. So let's move into our last package. So a lot of this package is based around getting enough creatures to effectively use Earthcraft, and also care about generating large amounts of mana through using cards like Deserted Temple or Candelabra. Realistically, everyone's on Field of the Dead. Most people are on Springheart and Tuco, and probably about 30-40% are on Deserted Temple. Probably maybe a little bit more than that. So those cards are like auto includes, more or less, or pretty close. And then the consideration becomes, how many more cards are you dedicating to getting bodies on the field, or untapping your lands? And that's a good question. I don't necessarily know if I have an answer. I haven't tested it. It's a very good grind strategy, but the question is it better than just putting more cards in the graveyard that you can see?
A lot of people have seen pretty high levels of success with Earthcraft. They really liked it. Candelabra, both Magus and just the Candelabra itself, tend to come in and out of lists. Scoot Swarm, this is not meant to be a dig, I can see how it might come across that way. It's not my intention. Is most often seen in casual lists. But while it's an area that I don't think has been super explored, I definitely can see, especially with Rootpath Purifier, it becoming a more consistent part of the list. I think it's just an area that we're kind of um, like someone needs to like pick it up, play it, love it, and then kind of become the like quote unquote like Scoot Swarm evangelist, as it
Yeah,
were.
we need ambassadors for packages and to explain like cost benefit analyses, what other packages work well, because this is all very contextual, right? I'll repeat it a lot. That we are very much beholden to decisions we've made prior in deck building, and these are like third and fourth order decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
So this is just where we're at so far. I as I've said with some other cards earlier in this kind of like presentation, I am not expecting Scoot Swarm to be the direction that Lumra's going.
Yeah. Same.
But uh, but that being said, that's just how I look at things, and I cannot wait to be proven wrong if someone manages to crack the deck in half. Um, I've been so privileged um in the ways that like people have tested things and given things a second shot that I didn't even give a first shot, and that have helped me like play the bear in ways that have really opened up new aspects of mono green. And so I cannot wait to be proven wrong if it's really good.
Yep. All right. So that's all our packages. I did have a primetime package put together, but alas.
Yeah, red. Damn it,
dude. Gav debated us for that last live stream.
Oh, absolutely. I was so ready.
He like Lucy'd us with the football, something fierce.
Yeah, I don't think we were even like coping. Like
no, we just expected that he was gonna say Man, I'm so glad I got that commissioned. At least the commission is relevant for longer. Although if he had gotten freed, I was going to get that commission animated of him breaking out. I'm still gonna do that as soon as he gets unbanned. But yeah, so primetime is a lot more. It's like a better Rootpath Purifier in the way we look at it.
Yeah.
So I don't. It doesn't actually need that much discussion. We kind of know why it would be great.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, Jumper. At Heisenberg, like literally, like Ian, Wounded, Tim, Max P, like everyone.
Yep. So, and you know what? I'm gonna take a moment to talk about why, because a lot of people in CEH kind of like get a little bit of tunnel vision about they think the change of the guard with a few people that the change of the guard from the third party to the internal with a third party council of nerds would be a shift towards CDH just because or shift towards like CDH consideration just because we've gotten a couple of more CDH oriented people on that little council of buddies, and I think that's a little bit wrongheaded. CDH is still going to be a significant minority in the broader EDH ecosystem. And if you look at all those cards that they unbanned, they're either unplayably expensive, like cards that end the game when casual people think that the game should be ending. Somewhere around 7 to 10, and then braids, which is a wild one. I'm actually surprised that one came off because of how much the card is made of salt. But gifts literally can't hurt casual. Will never hurt casual. People don't build decks with four card combos that cost less than 12 mana. They're just gonna play gifts and then develop over 2 more turns and then maybe win the game. That's how that card works in casual. So it's not dangerous. Primetime, good God. They print a 4 mana a 4 mana clone every single year. Garuda has so many.
Yeah.
So that's why Primetime did not get unbanned, because they did not want a 6 mana dockside. That they basically that just became a race to cloning Primetime. But it's unfortunate for us, but I get why they're being conservative. And hopefully, if they're conservative, they can get more data, get more comfortable and confident in the bracket system, and more things can go on the brackets, or go on the game changer list. Oh, let's go back. What's Perilous Forays? Let's do it. Throw an audible here. Sacrifice creature, search your library for a land with basic land type and put it into the battlefield tapped. No, but it's 5 mana. And then costs a creature. So 6 mana and a creature for a forest. Not super into that. Yeah, I mean, it's...
Yeah.
I get it. I get that it combos there, but then you're just kind of playing a pretty worse card.
Yeah. Go back to Scribefall. Go back to the tab.
Yeah.
Click on the card. Go down to if you scroll down, can you go to Scribefall Tagger? Bottom left underneath the toolbox. Can we find that effect on a creature? No, it looks like they only have tags for the artwork. Oh, hang on. Yeah. So if you look, those are have you used Scribefall Tagger before, Drew?
No.
Okay, so this is a super dope tool. I'd highly recommend. You can see every card in Magic has been tagged with a bunch of things in Scribefall. So a lot of times I'll like see this and I'll be like, oh, we don't want things on enchantments. We want them on creatures because they're way easier for us to tutor. I imagine that if we could get this effect on a creature, especially with Nature's Rhythm, it would be a lot easier for us to tutor Rootpath, Purifier, harmonize it, get whatever the other piece is, and then combo from there. Yeah, this is a great tool. Great tool. They also have one for like utility land and a bunch of other stuff. Would highly recommend this for people who are like, trying to find that one card that does something specific, or if there's a card that you see that you like, but it isn't quite the right fit, you needed to do something just a little bit different. This is a good way to kind of find it.
This is cool. I like this. This is very neat.
Yep. Waddy, this was how I found Urban Burgeoning.
I mean, Fertilid's not the worst.
I have also done that. I have also gone through all green cards in Magic. Dude, Waddy, I've been on Flare of Cultivation and Rogthrast, and it low-key like works really well. Like let's say you like use your Delighted Halfling, you tap it for a blue to cast your Thrasios, then you sacrifice it to Flare of Cultivation to put an extra land out.
All right.
It's really nice.
Well, as we're coming towards the end of this, I wanted to open up the floor to anyone that wanted to jump on stage, ask a question, share a thought, or if you can't jump in chat, a-okay to just put it in chat, but at me, please.
All right. Okay, Jumper says, what do we think of Dryad Arbor versus no Dryad Arbor? What do you think, Drew?
It seems like almost nobody is running it, and I assumed there was a good reason for it, but I've not sat down and thought about it too much. Like, it's a Green Suns card that ramps you. It seems okay. Like, and it's an untapped green source, but it's also a very slow green source, right? So it doesn't feel like a great card when I'm trying to play a carpet or a dork on one. It feels more like a dork, and at that point, like it seems just okay.
Yeah, it's definitely like not bad. I mean, it's a land, and we're a lands deck. Like it kind of meets the basic criteria to be worth considering.
Right.
But oftentimes I imagine a lot of people who have played the card will kind of share this experience that it doesn't quite earn its keep, is maybe how I would put it.
Right.
And that it's rare that you get it, and it's the card that you want.
Yep.
Not to say that it isn't bad. Being able to Green Sun Zenith for 0 is pretty dope.
Yep.
And then also, if you are on like natural order, it's also really, really good because it lets you like convert really, really early. But
if you're maybe when we're on prime time.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if it sees more play on prime time.
Yeah.
Tomato Soup asked, is there a consensus on Zurin Orb? I think jump in if I'm kind of off base here, Drew. From what I can tell, it seems like everyone who is not on Titania's Song and Null Rod is on Zurin Orb.
Yes, I really like Zurin Orb for 2 reasons. One, it gets you a lot of value on successive Lumra casts. It is a self-contained combo. It's a slow combo, but it is incredibly consistent at turning Lumra on turn 3 into Lumra on turn 4 into Lumra on turn 5, and you probably should be winning by that point. And that's very, very, very powerful. Very, very powerful. It also it's also a great card to see off the top of your Sylvan library. So my take there is that it makes Sylvan library a little bit safer. Not that you're super worried about it because you have like a 10/10 vigilance beater in the command zone, but that's not nothing. I would agree with Eric that it's pretty much just.
Saga.
What's that?
You can get it off Urza Saga.
Yep, that's very valid, very valuable. The real thing is that it is mutually exclusive with Titania Song and Null Rod, and if you're on Titania Song, I'd still probably run it, but it's probably the card I removed to put Null Rod in. And if I go back more towards a mid-range list, Zurin Orb's going straight back in. I like Safekeeper as well. Basically, I don't think you can run Null Rod and Curse Totem because I think you need to have either or of Zurin Orb and Sylvan Safekeeper. Preferably both because it's good density. But Safekeeper is tutorable. And a tutor in hand is a Safekeeper in the bush or whatever.
And you can take that to the bank.
Yeah, you can put that in your. I don't even know. I lost it there.
A follow-up question by Tomato Soup. Thanks for the Zurin Orb input. I appreciate it. With all the green tutors available, which are the least prioritized?
Let me pull up my Mox field real quick, and I'll tell you. Because the 2 I'm not on are the ones I don't care about. So let's look at our sorceries. Where are we at? So Eldritch, we like Eldritch a lot. So yeah, we're not. So worldly. So I would say worldly and Sylvan are like C and D tier respectively in terms of tutors. I think natural order is also like C tier because we ultimately don't need to. We don't want to turn our valuable scant creatures into other low mana value creatures, which is pretty much everything but Lumra, right? Primetime comes into the picture, we're changing the consideration. It probably bumps up a couple of notches. I like Summoner's Pact a lot for the same reason that I like Realms Uncharted. It's about finding windows, and Summoner's Pact can find you a window. It's not even like it's faster when attempted. It's a consistent when attempted. It helps you win on oh yeah, endurance with no mana. That's actually a pretty good thing. Am I running endurance right now? I'm not. Maybe I should consider.
Oh yeah, that's fine. That's cool.
That's maybe I should consider that.
Well, thanks, Waddy. See you later, bro.
Yeah, that is true. It finds Allosaurus, but I don't like Allosaurus. I don't have that many things that I'm worried about them countering. Yeah, that's actually a really that's a very good tool. Very good tool. I'm gonna consider that.
Some other comments people made: Worldly Tutor or Sylvan Tutor.
Yeah, those are pretty low.
Yeah, top of library tutors aren't great for us. I think Summoner's Pact is kind of worth it just because it's free. Yeah, I didn't realize so many people are on Summoners. That's cool.
I'm actually going to say I think Traverse is pretty bad.
Yeah, that's pretty fair.
I'm actually going to cut it right now for Endurance. I forgot I had it in.
Jumper made the comment that Eldritch Evolution is another reason to potentially be on Dryad Arbor.
I agree.
Which I also would agree with.
100% agree. But I don't think it's a big enough reason. It is a reason. It's adding to the case, but I don't think it necessarily gets it over the line.
Mm-hmm.
What was I going to add in? Endurance. Bam. Back to 100. See, we're doing live deck teching. Yeah, I mean, Eldritch goes from your mana dork if you have one into practically anything you need. Yeah, there's
it's also a Lumersac outlet.
Right, it's a Lumersac outlet. There's a lot of good things about that. Is there any other questions we had?
Not seeing any right now. If you have a question, now's the time.
Yeah, because
take it in, get it out there. Okay, now says several people are typing.
That's a neat interaction. I like that a lot. The going from the Eldrazi spawn into Hermit Druid.
Why male model?
Why male models?
That's funny. That's really funny.
I don't get that. What's that a reference to?
It's a reference to Zoolander.
Oh shit, you're right.
I literally saw that on TikTok this morning.
I need to fix my For You page then. Because if I'm not seeing Zoolander on TikTok, I'm doing something wrong.
If it ain't Zoolander, it ain't for me. Okay. My assumption is that if we've started quoting Zoolander, then we're good with the bear questions.
Well,
that may not be good.
Mechmo's is typing up, so I'll let him get it out, and then we'll. What I'll say is that you had that Eldrazi spawn into Hermit to set up a wind. That was an incredibly slow attempt. You spent a card. You spent a card to make the Eldrazi spawn. Then you spent a card to tutor out the Hermit Druid. Then you spun a turn to tutor up, right? Or to fill your yard, and that's like very slow. All
right, Mekmo says, put this in a Q&A recently, but I'm in a pod with several white players having added Elish Norn, Mother of Machines, and trying to get it out early. I find it hard to deal with apart from Song of the Dryads. Any tips?
Bridgework Battle. Bridgework Battle and Archdruid Charm.
Yeah, the rough thing is that like it's really hard to tutor for those.
I guess Thorn Mammoth and Kogla if you're really struggling with that, honestly. I would never consider beast with them.
First off, that's rough, and I'm sorry.
Yeah. Seeing Mom being Zero in a pretty mediocre, like that's a pretty specific meta and an unfortunate one, but not one that's likely to win. Oh yeah, Kogla doesn't. You're right. Might be.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Is it permanent? Is it permanent? Non-land permanents or permanents?
It's permanents, I think. Yeah, that's actually yeah. What's that 4 mana colorless one that like whenever it enters you have to sacrifice 2 untapped lands?
I don't know the name. That's a replacement effect. It's on an ETB.
Yeah. Oh, it's a replacement effect? Okay. Oh, Lotus Veil would be another good one. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way. I mean, also...
I would not build a worse deck to kind of non-bow combo with Mother of Machines. I wouldn't do that.
You wouldn't want to match their bad cards by adding other bad cards?
Yeah, no, yeah. I actually think Mom's one of the better Stax pieces, and there's very few decks that can make use of it. There's not really a lot of good solutions. Beat them to death with a 2020 bear. Like, unironically, Will of the Sultai, Archdruid's Charm, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, maybe go a little bit more into the instant sorcery side.
Include Dry,
especially if there is like a Mother of Machines out, you're gonna be able to get the world's like free escape shift because it's literally impossible for you to win.
Yeah.
It's
Dryads.
in a Dredge deck.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense because they can double the ETBs. They want that's man.
What's the Dryad recovery card that has flashback?
Dryad's Revival.
Yeah, Dryad's Revival, just so you have more. I would not tech Timeless Witness. I would tech Dryad's Revival to get cards back.
Don't even.
Like if
Clutch 101, Clutch 101 asks thoughts on Summer Bloom, but having some success with it. People even counter it here and there.
3 additional lands this turn. I mean, Mana Bond.
Yeah, I would recommend Mana Bond or Azusa. I think that's a great example of it's a pretty cool effect. But I would encourage you to try and attach it to a permanent if possible. Mike asked thoughts on Kamal's Will. Kamal is spelled Kamahls. Kamal's Will.
How do you spell that again?
Hit the did you mean. The did you mean is correct.
Oh yeah, gotcha.
Kamal's Will.
Okay, yeah. Right. This is the greenest. Jessica's got it. Okay. Any number of land.
Here, I can't quite read it. Can you? Can you click on it? Go big screen.
Yeah. So it's 3 and a green instant. Choose one if you can control a commander. As you cast this spell, you may choose both. Till end of turn, any number of target lands you control becomes a 1/1 elemental creature with vigilance, indestructible, and haste. They're still lands. The other option is choose target creature you don't control. Each creature you control deals damage equal to its power to that creature. Like it's a good bite. Like it's probably one of the better bites, honestly. 4 mana is more than I'm willing to spend on a kill spell. If this and we don't care about the overrun. Here's the thing about this card. if you need to kill Drannith, it does not kill Drannith. That's a problem. If you can't cast Lumra, you do not have the power toughness on the board to kill Drannith, which is like the only thing you care about in this situation. It
can net mana with. That's interesting. That's really interesting.
That's really cool, but you're not running it for that. You're running it to kill stuff, and it requires Lumra to be out. And outside of Dothy, I'm trying to kill creatures that are stopping me from winning. That's what all of the removal in this deck is for, is to unlock Lumra, realistically.
Clutch 101 asks, what's usually your guys' pile for Realms Uncharted?
Mirrorpool, Vesuva, Echoing Deeps, and
I like throwing Tabernacle in because people hate giving you Tabernacle. Yeah. And so it more often than not guarantees that only one other one gets put in the graveyard.
Yeah. I mean, the real answer is Realms Uncharted. Your pile is Mirrorpool, Vesuva, and nothing else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ulvenwald Tracker, is that the one that bites?
Target creature you control fights another target creature.
Yeah.
Fight.
It's too slow. It's also a 1/1.
Yeah. Not super hot on bite effect. That definitely could come down to just like politicking skill, as well as like anything I want to kill with this, they are going to use to block when I swing with Lumra. Yep. More often than not. Obviously there's like the Drannith argument of like, well, what if it's preventing you from casting Lumra? That's so, and it has a bear on it. Yeah, it's so cute.
So I think I've changed my opinion of this card. It's goated card of the year.
Yeah. Okay. I've moved it into the considering pile.
It's so good. But yeah, realistically, a lot of things have to go right, and if they're going right, you're not removing things.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I generally feel about cards that are like both sorcery speed and require creatures. Like fight effects are just not exactly what I want to do most of the time.
Like the deck has really, really strong ability to like interact, but we don't get to do it that often. So the way I try to look at it is like, don't interact to stop players, interact to stop wins, right? Because you really only get the one, maybe two chances to like use up your interaction. So just make sure that when you do it, you don't miss. Astro says, thoughts on Concordant Crossroads? Give all your 2/2 zombies you make with Field of the Dead haste. Enables tappers like Savello or Sacred Tribe Scout. I thought about it for a little bit. I think if I wanted this effect, I would actually probably put in Hall of the Bandit Lord.
I probably
for me, this would go back to like if I wanted that effect, I want it to be tutorable, and I don't want to like give my opponents undue advantage, and so I think that's probably what I would do.
The best win you have with the best win you have a winning card that combos with like infinite dudes from Field of the Dead is Altar of Dementia, because it also functions as an excellent sack outlet for Lumra and a graveyard filler before you're going for a win, because passing to empty libraries is better than having to attack, because it doesn't matter what part of the turn you are executing your combo. So that's how I feel about Concordant Crossroads, is that it is a dangerous card. And we already have a better in slot, even though it's more expensive. It's just as shifting Woodlands a bowl. I hope that made sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely puts a lot more pressure on you as a pilot because you kind of have to like do some tarot card reading essentially to make sure you have your shifting woodland lined up
Right.
correctly. But
It's all unfortunately it's got a bit of the um, defense grid syndrome, where if you get stopped, or you're just setting up, or you're forced to pass for whatever reason, right? You may be handing the game over. Not usually, but it could be.
for the sake of time, Drew, we're about to hit the 3 hour mark. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide.
Yeah.
If you guys have any questions, definitely hit up the question and answer forum in the Discord.
Yep. So, last little bit is savage punches and how to avoid them. This is just a bit of a refresher on best practices when it comes to practicing. Best practices. So I'm going to show you the slide. I'm going to go in a little bit more detail. So, highly recommend just playing as much as you can, and playing with a lot of meta decks if you can. Play against seasoned pilots that are very good, and try to cultivate exceptional players that are playing decks that matter. But don't limit yourself to just those. Also, reach out to good pilots that are specialists in fringe decks, like I'm trying to think of a good one right now. Tameshi or Shorkai, or something that's not Azorius. Rakdos. Right? Like you play the field, but center yourself on meta decks, because you, playing a mono green lands deck, are the fringe deck at the table. You kind of want if there's two fringe decks at the table, there isn't enough blue to stop the blue farm player. So that's actually something that's very very important. Is you probably should practice under unideal circumstances, but also this is probably not the deck that wants to play into a Lumra, Naya, Rakdos, blue farm, right? You don't want to. That's a bad time for you, generally.
Yeah, if you're practicing mulligans, try to start assuming you've already seen your first and second 7 and you're already down to 6. Or things like that. Like, practice putting yourself in suboptimal decisions.
Yes.
Or suboptimal positions.
Right.
Because kind of what we talked about earlier, I think the most common experience isn't that the deck can't win, it's that you don't realize it can win.
Yep.
And so trying as much as possible to stretch those like decision-making muscles and force yourself to use every aspect of the deck is going to reduce those situations where you're driving home in the car, or like showering after an argument, and you're like, ah.
Yeah. Something I'll say is that good ways to mulligan. It's not on the slide, and it will be on future slides, but our future open seasons, is that practicing with a particular card in mind is essential to making sure you know as many lines as possible. So when you mulligan and you're trying to play out lines, you have to make sure you see the line you're looking for. Feel free to just draw one fewer cards, and you always are playing a hand plus the card you're trying to practice. Intentionally stacking your hand for mulligan and playing out a combo line purposes are super important for getting reps on that card. Also, this is very, very good at utilizing or managing your test slots, and getting intentional mulligan practice with those test cards, because you can mulligan 100 times and only see a test card like 4 of them, and that's not useful. So draw one less card. You're always drawing that card. How does it feel in the early game? How does it feel with X card? And more importantly, when you have that test card, it's not just that test card. It's the other 3 cards that you didn't include that could have been that test card. So if you have card A that you're just consistently trying to keep in that test hand, think about what if this had been card B, C, and D? It literally could just be a wild card that you're keeping in your hand and considering as a part of all these mulligans, and then saying, okay, if this is card A, how does it feel? If it's card B, how does it feel? If it's card C, how does it feel?
Yeah, the way Jumper worded it is the goal is to test the new card, not test your deck's ability to find the new card.
Right. Absolutely. Unless the card is meant to be a tool, unless you're playing a toolbox deck like Magda, then that's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Because quadrant theory breaks down when your commander is a tutor. Another thing that I want to mention is that when you're mulliganing, make sure you have a pod in mind. Do 5 or 10 hands with a pod that's like pre-generated. The CEDH helper bot in the I believe we already have a mulligan channel here. I set that up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it works really well.
Yeah, so the mulligan channel here pre-generates pods, and you don't necessarily need to use it to mulligan and like spam that chat. You can just go to Moxfield and shuffle up, but generate pods of meta decks so that you have a pod in mind. You know what your seat placement is, and so you can like mulligan with context, because you need to get reps in, mulliganing down for important interaction or important Stax pieces, or saying, okay, I'm taking the no brakes on this train. I have to go fast because I'm going to get raced. That kind of those type of decision points in practice, like elements to practice, only show up when you know what your pod is. So don't mulligan without context, because it's less useful.
This will also go back to the community assigned roles. In the future, we're going to try and set it up where people can ping to have like someone who's comfortable like coaching or like going over mulligans with someone, so they can hop in voice chat like with you.
Yep.
That's something that's kind of like in the works that will take a while to like set up. But that's kind of like one of our goals for the Discord moving forward.
Yep. It works really well in the Magda server, so it should be. You guys are awesome too, so I have no doubts that it's going to work here. That's a lot of mulligan talk. More for gameplay. Trade off. Play out a trade off the deck every game or every couple games. It's very important to know your interaction points through the eyes of other decks, so you know what's likely to happen. It's also important to play against a lot of decks and play a lot of decks. You will be a better player if you play Rogthras, if you play Rakdos, if you play Magda, if you play Sisay, if you play Blue Farm. You will get better at playing Lumra through playing all those other decks, especially if you're playing against Lumra regularly. To know how to defeat oneself is to know how to win through those strategies. You're now playing 3 steps ahead of the person you were before you practiced, because you now know a lot of eventualities based on the decks in your pod. This is more something that I've come to understand. I've moderated my opinion over time. I used to think casual CDH was effective. I now find it a little less effective at making you better. I don't want people to be playing comfortably, and I don't want people to be playing as if the games don't matter. So my suggestion is to always play as if comp rel is being enforced. Takebacks should be within the realm of, if no new information has been resolved or been revealed, then takebacks are fine. Political takebacks are actually necessary, especially for decks like ours, especially ones that like resolve Stax pieces. But it's very easy to politic without actually putting a card on the stack. Revealing information is always legal, so revealing a card and saying I'm going to play this if no one explains, gives me an alternate path, is different than saying I cast this now. Who has some thoughts on this? Like those are different situations, and I wouldn't put yourself in a position to have a judge call generally for for like the implication of takebacks. But so if the always phrase things as clearly as you can when you're talking about, you know, revealing information versus putting something on the stack to resolve. Take pictures of your mulligans, and just so you can keep that all in your head. It's hard to remember stuff after events. I have tried, especially for events. Take a picture of the pod. Take a picture of your mulligans. Take a picture of the card you ended. You know, figure out a way to. I recommend like taking a picture of your hand and then like turning the two cards that you're bottoming upside down, for example, to like keep it all in your hand. It's very easy to take a quick picture. That way you don't have to write it down. Pictures are worth 1,000 notepads. And also some event spaces don't have good Wi-Fi, so you can't like do like a form or anything like that. There's a lot of time to be can use just by taking pictures. With mulliganing, just jumping back into the mulliganing, play out multiple lines. Play out a variety of lines. Play as if a card has gotten Ragavand. Like, that's how deep you should go. Like, you should say, okay, this card is not in the deck right now, or I can't get there with it. There's a Dranith out. I can't play Lumra. How do I win this game? Like, create gameplay puzzles for yourself. Mulligan with the intent of trying different lines very regularly. Politics is hard to describe outside of just get better at it. Get more comfortable utilizing it. Get comfortable being a friendly, forward, someone who moves conversations forward and manages conversations in a very friendly manner. There's a lot of really great players who are very good politickers who do not have great reputations because of how they politic, and the players that are really world-class politickers that have great reputations with how they politic are better players, generally.
Yeah, it's definitely like just like I said earlier, I would highly encourage you guys, especially in a deck like this, which can sometimes inspire our opponents to make bad decisions. Keep your focus on making sure that your opponents are playing smart instead of playing scared.
Yep.
At the end of the day, make the bet that you're the better Magic player, that you're the better pilot, and that's going to be the reason you win.
Yep.
You may not see immediate results like someone who is willing to like yell or like fly through a mission or things like that. But at the end of the day, like I think that like if you are encouraging your opponents to make smart and educated decisions based off of like known quantities of like information, it means they're way more likely to like remove Kinnon's pieces instead of yours.
Yeah. If you make yourself,
you are pushing correctly.
Yeah. If you are reliable and consistent in the way you interact with the game politically and analytically, and communicate that appropriately with your opponents, that will be positive EV for you. I don't have a moral stance on lying at the table personally. I think this is a game about misdirection. Personally, for me. So I have no qualms with anyone that outright lies for positive EV. What I think is that lying is not good EV. It's actively going to end up losing you more games than it's going to win you if you play with anyone but the blindest of online metas. And those games don't matter. The tournament ones do, as far as I'm concerned. So being honest is a good. Being honest means that you can mind control people bluntly. Being honest enough, I guess I should say, means you can mind control people, and mind controlling people is how monocolor decks can thrive in a meta full of people with 15 cards in their hand and probably a win next turn. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Also, no slow play. Play fast. Make mistakes. Live with them. No takebacks. don't play with turns. Just the follow whatever the most consistent rule, comp rel tournament addendum is being used. What Jumper said, yeah, know your deck before going in game. Absolutely. That's why I say, Goldfish a metric shit ton. Play as if slow play is actually being penalized, even in friendly games. Also, communicate all these expectations with your pods. Don't, request them. It is not a given that someone's practice needs to look like this, but advocate for it. Advocate for this type of practice. Advocate for higher levels of gamemanship and sportsmanship, and you will, if you practice like it's a real event, you will play better at your real event. So don't practice like it's beer and pretzels casual EDH night. Otherwise, because you will just you'll get raffle stomped by brain drain and sloppy and slow play. All right. That's
I
how
think
you.
that's potentially a pretty good place to call it. I think.
Yeah, don't get savage pumped by slow play, friends.
Yeah.
Or mind control. Those are both bad things. Thank you all for coming. We had close to 20 folks for the vast majority of this, and that's a pretty awesome number for a community of 800 or 700 something. And I just want to say I appreciate you all. I appreciate Eric for being here with me. I appreciate the another monocolored deck to fill out my Infinity Gauntlet. And I am so very pleased with how the deck and the community has come along, and I look forward to it. Even as I don't get to play it, I get to see how well you guys are doing. So keep on being bears, I guess. I don't have a cute sign
and see.
Yeah.